covered scientific misconduct, fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism. So, in today's session, we are going to cover many other aspects in publication and ethics. Yesterday, is caller or a participant was asking about the conflict of interest. So at that time, I have let her know that we have a different complete session on this topic. So we are having our resource person who has expertise in this topic. So we have invited him especially for you. So please uh, pay attention on this important session. Do not go away. Please join fast who have already joined. I would like to make you aware what we are going to cover today. We will cover in first session the conflict of interest in group discussion as well as in separate. Second, then we are going to discuss intellectual honesty and research integrity, how to keep it. And in the last of the session, we will going to highlight the violation of publication, ethics, authorship, and contributorship. So yesterday also, if participants was asking about ki what will happen if there is a violation in publication, we are not able to properly handle the publication issues ethically if we are not able to going on the right path. So today I would like to invite Dr. Archana Sharma ma'am. Ma'am, are you there?
Ma'am, yes.
So ma'am, you are invited to introduce our esteemed research speaker, Mr. Anand Sehgal, and he will continue with the session with conflict of interest. So chairs is yours and you will share the session from here.
Thank you. Education is the key to unlock the golden doors of success. A warm good morning to everyone. I, Dr. Archana Sharma, on behalf of Department of Education, is profoundly delighted to take an opportunity to introduce the resource person for the first session of today, Mr. Anand Sehgal. Mr. Anand Sehgal is working as an assistant professor in Department of CSE in the Northcap University, Gurugram. He is pursuing PhD in CSE from GD Goenka University, Gurugram. Sir has done MTech in software engineering from ITM, presently the Northcap University. BTech in CSE from MDU Rohtak, and has been pursuing advanced diploma in DevOps Cloud from IIT Guwahati. Sir has more than 12 years of academic experience in reputed institutions. Sir has presented more than 10 research papers in various national and international conferences. He has delivered a large number of guest lectures as a resource person. Sir has been a key member of admissions, training, and placement division and has played a role as a mentor for personality development programs. He has a vast list of seminars and conferences attended and organized. Sir has been rewarded with Excellence Award in Teaching at KIIT. It gives me immense pleasure to extend to a very warm welcome on behalf of Department of Education. It is a matter of privilege and pleasure for me to invite such an eminent personality to share his vast experience. Please, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for those kind words. And I'm thankful to Dr. Sushila for giving me an opportunity here to speak on such a topic. So without wasting much of a time, I'll rightly dive into the topic and I'll just share my screen for the same. Okay. So are the slides visible to everybody?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Your slides are visible.
So starting with this particular topic that I have been assigned, that is conflicts of interest in research. Fine. So before coming to this particular topic, I'll just give you the objectives that I am going to cover for the day. So basically, I'll be starting with basic of research ethics. Then I'll discuss with you what is scope, and then we are going to start what is the main topic for the day. That what is interest, what is conflict of interest, and what are different interests like financial and non-financial competing interests. Fine, and how a scholar can disclose interest in various domains, and how a disclosure statement is written. So I'll be covering all these objectives for the day. Fine. So let me start with the first objective, that is the norms of research. And I think everybody, that being the eighth day of the this particular FDP, I think everybody now will be having a base foundation that what are the various norms of research. And when I'm talking of academic integrity, I think that terminology is clear with everybody. That is including honesty, fairness, respect and response, that whenever we are publishing something, is this particular terminology, I think, clear to everybody? That is what is academic integrity. So I think when most of the people thinks of ethics, they basically think of rules, that what is right, what is wrong. And whenever we are doing research, our main aim is also in the same direction, that we want to present something that is true, fine, and that is without any sort of an errors. Fine. For so what we want to do is that we want to prohibit against fabrication, falsifying or mispresenting the data, to promote the minimize errors, to promote and minimize the errors. So I think this thing is clear with everybody. Okay. Now
Yes,
moving
sir. You can go bilingually also because we are having the good kind of audience.
fine. So basically, what is this particular norms of research? That there are some ethical standards that need to be followed. For example, if I'm using somebody else's work and I'm not referencing that particular thing, I am submitting the same article again and again. Fine. So all these things, they basically come under different plagiarisms. Fine. So moving forward, and now when I'm doing a research, the first thing that whenever you are doing a research, there is a question that is asked in a lot of universities, that how this research is relevant. Is this research relevant for the society? What you will be doing for the society? So this is one of the main thing that has to be come into the mind of a researcher, that whenever he is doing some sort of a research, that how I can imbibe some sort of a social ethics or social values into that particular research. And here that particular person is accountable to the public. Now this is a very important word, and that's why I've written it in bold. I've highlighted in bold that because whenever you are doing something in research and you are presenting something, you are accountable to the public. Fine. And I'll be again coming into that, into this particular line, when I'll be discussing the conflicts of interest.
मटेरियल है मेरे पास,
Okay.
इतना ज्यादा आकाश के पड़े हैं मेरे
I
पास,
think please unmute
वो
yourself.
MPC
Yes,
के हैं,
yes.
वो पड़े हैं मेरे पास, तो उसका लालच मत कर.
Yes, I like everybody to please keep their self on mute. So this is the particular thing that we have discussed. And now moving forward, the basic norms of the research, there are some codes and guidelines that are given for a researchers. Fine. So I'll be discussing those codes and guidelines. Now where I can find these codes or guidelines, that is where COPE comes into picture. So I'll be discussing now the various research ethics, going much into detail for that. Like you have to give the data, you have to represent in a very honest manner. fine. It has to be peer reviewed, fine. You should strive to be biased when we are doing some sort of an experimental design in different areas. And it should be integrity should be there in the data, that is consistency of thoughts and action. So these are the major terminologies that are into the research ethic, that whenever you are showing the data, fine, there should be confidentiality of that particular data, and you should respect for intellectual properties. I think is everybody has heard of the term, that is what is Creative Commons. There is a term in research that is Creative Common. Yes, any of the scholars who have heard of this particular term, that what is Creative Commons? Or they have heard about GNU? Look, basically, when I'm talking of Creative Commons, basically, when I'm talking of Creative Commons, for example, if I've written a paper and I want different people to collaborate on the same, like an open source in computer science. For example, I am creating a Linux operating system and I want people to add the applications into that particular software. Or if I'm using, for example, Android, and I can add my own softwares into that. That is where this particular terminology Creative Commons come into picture. So if I place my article in Creative Commons, then different authors, different researchers, they can use that particular paper and they can add the terminologies into that. So that is not violating any sort of a research or ethics if I have submitted something in the Creative Commons for others to use. And if you can also use that particular paper from Creative Commons. Now coming to the main thing that I'm going to discuss for the day, that is scope. Now, what is this scope? This scope is basically the Committee on Publication Ethics. Now, this is, you can say, the mainstay, or you can say this is the main committee that is reviewing the publication ethics, or this is, you can say, it is like a constitution of publication. Fine. So COPE is basically committed to educating and supporting the editors, publishers, and those who are involved in the publication ethics with the aim of moving the culture, fine, publication culture towards one where ethical practices become a normal part of the publication culture. Fine. So I think everybody, have you listened to this particular term COPE in the previous days? So I think COPE is the area that we have to be that is basically showing the different codes that what a researcher should follow. Fine. So whenever we are writing a research paper, our approach is formally in the direction, fine, of influencing through education and resources, so that we can foster a very large community. But if you are writing something, then COPE, you have to write in accordance with the COPE, and all the generals, they also abide by the rules that are declared by COPE, that is Committee on Publication Ethics. So now moving forward, so it was basically developed in 2017, and they are applicable to all the different publication literatures in various scholarly literatures, be it editors, journals, publisher, and institution. All these have to abide by this particular laws of COPE. So I'm going to discuss some of the key practices of the COPE before now we jump to the main part, that is conflicts of interest.
Anand sir,
Yes, ma'am.
could you make it more zoom by going on slideshow?
Okay. So is this more clear now?
Yes, it is.
Okay, fine. So the first thing is that what is the first core practice of the COPE is that there are allegations of misconduct. Fine. So whichever general you are writing to, general should have a clearly described process for handling the allegations, and they have to be brought through for attention by some sort of a whistleblower or some sort of a publisher attention. Fine. So general must take serious allegations of misconduct pre-publications and post-publication. Fine. So misconduct is also a very important part, that if there is some sort of a misconduct in terms of this, then also COPE comes into practice. Second is authorship and contributorship. So clear and transparent policy should be there, that who is the author, who is the contributor for that particular research paper. And I'll be discussing on those particular topic when I'll be discussing more into uh, conflicts of interest. Just giving you a base of what we are going to cover for the day. And then the third practice is complaints and appeals, that a general should have a described process of handling the complaints against the general. For example, if my paper is not published on time, fine, so there might be different complaints and appeals that might be there against the generals. So again, COPE has mentioned proper practices through which you can appeal for the same. Now this is the area that we are going to focus on the day, that is conflict of interest and competing interest. This is again one of the core practices of the COPE. Now what is this? There must be clear definition of conflict of interest, and what is a process in the general for handling the conflict of interest in case of an author, reviewer, editor, or if it is identified even before publication, if it is identified even after publication, how you are going to deal with this. So conflict of interest and competing interest is a very key area, or you can say it is a core practice that is embodied by the COPE. And the next is data and reproducibility. And the general should have a clear policy that how the data is made available. Fine. From where for example, author is taking the data. Is it some sort of a registered data, some sort of a if he's taking the data for clinical trials, then what sort of a resources he's using. Fine. Then ethical oversight, that the policies should be ethical. For example, if you are doing some sort of a research on animals, you cannot harm animals or something like that. So ethical oversight should be kept into picture before you are using the same. Fine. And then we have intellectual property. Yes, anything you want to ask, Mehak? Yes, Mehak, have you raised your hand? Do you want to ask anything?
Might be it is by chance, sir.
Okay, fine. Okay. So these are the main core practice, that when we are doing some sort of a intellectual property, all the policies on intellectual property, including the copyrights, publishing licenses, that should be clearly described. That these are the main core practices. You can say these are the laws of the COPE, that is Committee on Publication Ethics. So I think now the base is clear to everybody that what we are going to do for the day. So I'll now jump into the topic, that what is interest, what is conflicts of interest. There are other practices also. For example, if my paper is peer reviewed, fine, then the peer review process must be transparent. Agar aapka process koi that is going through the process of peer reviewed, it should have a definite time. Fine. And the process should be transparent. So all the generals should have a proper policy prescribed as per the COPE guidelines. Fine. So these are the main core practices of the COPE. Now, coming to the topic that we are going to discuss for the day. So I think now everybody is clear with what is ethics, research ethics, honesty, integrity should be a part of the research. Fine. Then we discussed something related to COPE, that this is the Committee on Publication Ethics, that is prescribing that all the rules for the journals, reviewers and researchers, and they should abide by all these particular rules. Now, coming to the topic, first of all, conflicts of interest. So what is an interest? If I ask you what basically is an interest, for example, I might be holding a position in some sort of an organization and I am doing a research for the same. So there might be some sort of a financial interest associated with the same, or I might get some sort of a promotion for the same if that research is validated. So there are different interests whenever we are doing research. There could be different interests. So interest is defined basically as a commitment, goal, or a value that is held by an individual or an institution. Fine, that research or interest might give you some value. For example, examples include, for example, if a research project is completed, you might be gaining some increase in your status. Your status might increase. Fine, you might get promotion or recognition among your peers or colleagues. Fine. So these are the different interests that might be there. So now coming to, is this point clear to everybody that what is an interest? Yes, everybody, please be interactive so that I am able to judge that everybody is getting what I'm telling. So, is this particular point clear that what is an interest?
So there is no query, so hoping
Okay.
that they are getting.
Okay, fine. So now moving to this particular topic, or thing that we are going to discuss, that what is conflict of interest. Fine. So conflict of interest basically could be something like nepotism. I think everybody might have heard of this particular word, nepotism. कि nepotism क्या है? For example, you might be giving favors to your relative and close friends, and you might have heard of that particular term a lot of time, that uh, there is a nepotism in this particular area, in this particular domain, that they are only giving favors to their relatives and close friend. Fine. So then the next point is self dealing. Fine, that when someone acts in their own interest rather than in the interest of an organization. For example, if I have been given for example a particular position from where I'm working, and I am, instead of looking at the interest of the organization or the individuals or the whole of the society, I'm looking for my self benefits. Fine, then also that is an example where this particular thing, that is conflict of interest, come into picture. So when it is illegal, for public sector, judges may recuse themselves if there is a relationship with one of the parties in a case. For example, if I'm judging a particular case and I am in a favor of a particular party, fine. So that is where a conflict of interest comes into picture. I might be gaining some sort of a financial or non-financial interest in the same. Fine. If the legislature attempts to profit from the knowledge, fine. If I am, for example, if I am stealing my company's information or my company's data, and I am, for example, passing that particular data into different organization, that is again this particular thing comes into picture. You might have heard of this particular terminology, that a lot of time that whenever our data, that is confidential data related to our credit cards or debit cards, fine, and they are held by one particular organization, and there might be some person who might be stealing those particular authentication, and that might be given to some sort of agencies, fine, uh, that might corrupt or that might take our money. Fine. So this sort of thing that can be there in when we are talking of conflicts of interest. So another thing, that if a company has a proof that a board member has profited from their role on the board, the board member can be taken to the court. Fine. So all these are different examples where a conflict of interest could be there. So now moving forward, what basically is a conflict of interest as per as the integrity in scientific research? So this is the main definition. A conflict of interest in the research exists when the individual has interest in the outcome of the research that may lead to personal advantage, and that might therefore in actuality or appearance compromise the integrity of research. Fine. So when we are talking in this particular terminology, we are saying that, for example, if there is someone who is gaining some sort of a personal advantage from that particular research, फाइन, दैट आई हैव ऑलरेडी टोल्ड यू कि किसी भी तरह की हमें कोई पर्सनल एडवांटेज मिल रही है, फाइन, और उसके लिए मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ, व्हाट आई एम डूइंग इज दैट आई एम वायलेटिंग द इंटीग्रिटी ऑफ द रिसर्च, आई एम वायलेटिंग द इंटीग्रिटी ऑफ द रिसर्च। मैं जितने अपने एथिक्स हैं उनको लो करता हुआ, ठीक है, आई एम गेनिंग माई सम सॉर्ट ऑफ अ फाइनेंशियल गेन for that that is where conflict of interest in research comes into picture. Is this point clear with everybody? Okay, so I hope this point is
Yes,
clear.
they are getting, sir.
Okay, fine. So now moving forward, that what we have now discussed, what is conflict of interest. So there is another name for this particular thing, that is conflict of interest. And sometimes a lot of persons, they also call is competing interest. Fine. So competing interest or conflict of interest, they are one and the same thing. And it can occur, for example, when you are an employer or a sponsor, fine, and you could have a financial, commercial, legal, or a professional relationship with other organization, fine, or the people working with them, that could influence your research. So I can you can see this particular diagram, that it could be there when you could have personal benefits, you could have personal benefits from the individuals, it could be illegal, unethical, fine. These are the main thrust areas when we are talking of competing interest or uh, conflicts of interest. So now coming to the research paper, that what we are basically into. So when a conflict of interest is to be disclosed, ki if I'm writing something, fine, how I'm going to show that there is a conflict of interest, or if I want to disclose that particular conflict of interest, how I'm going to do the same, fine. So this particular point, full disclosure is required when you submit your paper to a journal, fine. For example, there is some sort of an interest that is there with that particular paper, that somebody you are gaining some sort of a financial advantage for the same, so you have to write that particular thing when you are submitting that paper to the journal, fine. The general editor will first use this information to inform his or her editorial board. The general editor, the next step is that the editor is going to inform that you have this particular conflict of interest. It might be financial, it might be non-financial. I'll also discuss that. So first thing is that you have to disclose that, and the general editor will now take this thing into uh, consideration, and after taking this particular thing into consideration, they may then publish such disclosure to assist the readers in evaluating that particular article. For example, you might be I'll just cite an example. For example, you might be in a board member of some major electrical appliance company, fine, and you are creating some sort of a bulb, I would say, bulb, and you are saying that this is a very um, eco-friendly bulb, or it doesn't emits a lot of radiations, fine, and you have done a research in on the same as given assistance by your company. So there is a lot of financial assistance that is given, and your company will be getting profit from that particular research if that particular product uh, comes into the market, fine, and it becomes a success. So these things you have to take into consideration when as an reader I'll be reading such particular for example paper given by that particular author. So I'll take into consideration that this author is already in a member of that particular company, he is on the board of that particular company, and he's writing the same. So he might be getting some sort of a financial assistance, or he might be having some financial interest or non-financial interest with the same. So I think this point is now clear with everybody. Or instead, the editor may decide not to publish your article on the basis of declared competing interest. And if the general sees that you have some sort of a interest into that particular article, fine, in some sort of a conflicting interest into that particular article, so he might even not publish that particular article. So these are the things that needs to be disclosed as a publisher, or as an author. I would say as an author, these are the things that needs to be disclosed, that you have to give a full disclosure, and the general editor will use this information. He will again send it to the board, and he will they will again see that whether this article needs to be published or not, fine. And that particular conflict of interest has to be disclosed to the reader, so that they can judge that whether this particular thing is right or wrong, fine. So moving forward, you can declare the competing interest in your cover letter or on the manuscript submission form in the journal's online peer review system. आपको एक cover letter पे वो अपना लिखना पड़ेगा that these are the competing interest when I'm submitting this particular paper. And the competing interest can be financial or non-financial in nature. Till now अभी तक हमने सिर्फ मैंने आपको financial competing interest के बारे में ही डिस्कस किया, but we have not discussed this particular thing, that is what is non-financial competing interest. So I'll comment on to that. To ensure the transparency, any associations which can be perceived by others as a competing interest must also be declared. So all the associations, fine, they should be transparently declared to all the stakeholders, so that they are able to make a valid they are able to approach at a valid decision whether you are writing something that is suitable for the society or not. So now moving forward, so what are the basic examples of financial competing interest? So we are going to discuss some of the basic financial examples of the competing interest. The first one is employment. I might be getting some sort of an employment for the same. There might be some voluntarily involvement for the same. There might be collaborations with a group relating to the content of the article. You might have seen that a lot of medicines were there in the time of corona, and a lot of researchers were doing um, research on the same, and a lot of agencies even collaborated for the same, that when they were doing something for the society. But a lot of people were of the stance that they might be getting some sort of a financial assistance, they might be getting some sort of financial assistance for the same. So whenever you are doing some sort of a research, there might be different collaborations with the group that might be relating to the content of the article. So there are grants from an entity paid to the author of an organization. He might be getting some sort of a grants, or there might be some sort of a personal fees that are received by the authors, such as royalties. If I am selling some sort of a books and all that, consulting fees or lecture fees. So these are all the financial competing interests that are there. Then there could be different patents that are held by the authors, their institutions, or the funding organizations. Royalties could be there, that is being received by the authors or the institutions. Stocks or shares, fine. These are all the examples of the financial competing interests. So I think this point is clear with everybody.
Yes, sir, there is no query in the box, but yes, there was
Okay,
a
fine.
question. Okay, could you summarize this?
Sorry.
Could you summarize the conflict of interest in few words? Those who have joined later. This is the query.
Okay, so those who have joined late, I would say that
In few sentences.
okay, so basically conflicts of interest or competing interest is that that when you are getting some sort of a financial support, or that may be non-financial support in front for that particular research, fine. So that is where conflict of interest comes into picture. So we are already discussing the same, and I think you can get a view of the same thing, that I might be collaborating with a particular board, I might be getting grants, I might be getting personal fees for the same, I might have some royalties for that particular research that I'm presenting, I might be having a share, I might be a shareholder for that particular organization. So all these are the financial competing interests. Now coming to the non financial competing interest. अभी तक तो हमने फाइनेंशियल कंपीटिंग इंटरेस्ट की बात करी कि फाइनेंशियल कंपीटिंग इंटरेस्ट क्या हो सकते हैं, कि मेरे पास वहां से कोई एम्प्लॉयमेंट आ सकती है, रॉयल्टी आ सकती है, पर्सनल फीस आ सकती है, कंसल्टेशन फीस आ सकती है. बट नॉन फाइनेंशियल competing इंटरेस्ट क्या हो सकते हैं? For example, there might be a computer program, fine, that is written by somebody else, and I'm using that particular program to my advantage. Fine, that is where a non-financial competing interest can come into picture. There could be a digital application. There could be an access to data repositories. For example, I am accessing the data, I am using the data that is not a creative common data, fine, that is not you are not authorized to use, but somehow I have access to that particular data and I'm getting the data from different data repositories, fine. तो उस केस में भी हमारा क्या होता है, there is, that is an example of non financial competing interest, fine, that I am using the information or the data that is not prescribed for me. So these are the main key areas when I'm talking of non-financial competing interests. Then there are archival resources by an entity that might benefit or at disadvantage financially or reputationally from the published findings. Fine. कि archival resources क्या होते हैं? For example, I am publishing something and it might have some sort of a, you can say कि उसके ऊपर उसका जो है cause पड़ रहा है in a backdrop, fine, that is where this archival resources comes into picture. For example, there was a study that Facebook is now using the data of the users, fine, there is Facebook is using the data of the users, and it is manipulating the data as their advantage, fine. And for even that, the CEO of the Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, was also taken to the court for the same. So what could have a archival backdrop on the same is that when such sort of articles or some sort of things come into public, fine, many of the users will say that they will not be using Facebook, or they will not be disclosing their personal data onto that is where archival resources comes into picture, that if somebody is publishing something, fine, in the backdrop a lot of things are happening for the same. That is where this particular terminology comes into picture. I'll cite a very simple example for the same. There was a match, cricket match, sorry, a football match was going on. Football interview, I would say, was going on. And one of the reputed footballer, fine, what he did was that he just lifted the Coke bottle from his desk and put that particular Coke bottle on the ground, fine. By just doing that, the stock of the shares of that particular company, fine, fell on that particular day, because he was of the view that these things are not good for the is not good for the society, and being such an eminent footballer, so the people took that particular thing into consideration and the shares even fell on that particular day. So a lot of things are there in the backdrop whenever you are doing something. So holding a position on the boards of industry bodies or private companies might benefit or might be at disadvantage financially or reputationally from the published findings. So they might be having some sort of a disadvantage that I've already told you on such sort of a published findings. Okay. I'll also cite one example for the same. If anybody has heard of this particular medicine that a lot of people have been using in terms of in the time of corona, that is dolo medicine. Now a study has been conducted on the contents of that particular medicine, that how it is, how much hard that particular medicine is, and how much it affects the different organs of uh, organs of human beings, fine. And a lot of people are now not now recommending that particular medicine to the public. So if something some findings are there and they are published, so it might could have a disadvantage on a particular company if those findings are done in a very honest manner. So examples of non-financial competing interests also include writing assistance or administrative support from a person or an organization that might benefit or at the disadvantage from the published findings. So if you are getting some sort of a writing assistance when you are writing something, fine, that is also a non-financial competing interest. Fine. Then personal, political, religious, ideological, academic, and intellectual competing interest, which are perceived to be relevant to the published consent. So all these things, uh, they basically come under the non-financial competing interests. So involvement in legal actions related to work. If there are no competing interests to declare, the author should include a statement to the article to confirm that no relevant financial or non-financial competing of interest to report. So if you're saying that there is nothing that I want to disclose, fine, there is no competing interest, then also you have to write that there is no conflict of interest or no competing interest for that particular article. So I think these particular examples are now clear that what is a non-financial competing interest. That if I'm using some data from a repository, find that I'm not authorized to. I am getting some type of a writing assistance from somebody for writing a paper, fine. And from my finding, if somebody is getting some sort of a financial assistance, or in the backdrop of my finding somebody is not getting their shares are going down, fine. So all these things, they come under non-financial competing interests. So I think now everybody should be clear about these two terminologies, that what is financial and what is non-financial competing interest. All right. So moving forward, now as a author, जो हमारे लिए सबसे important है कि as a author how I am going to disclose the competing interest. हमें क्या क्या करना चाहिए, what are the steps that we should take. So whenever you are writing something, authors are requested to disclose the interests that are directly or indirectly related to the work that is submitted for publication. तो आपको जब भी आप जो अपना कोई पेपर सबमिट कर रहे हैं, यू हैव टू डिस्क्लोज ऑल द इंटरेस्ट. मैंने आपको अब दोनों इंटरेस्ट बताए हैं, दैट माइट बी फाइनेंशियल इंटरेस्ट और दैट माइट बी अ नॉन फाइनेंशियल इंटरेस्ट. यू हैव टू डिस्क्लोज both the types of interest whenever you are submitting something. And the interest within the last 3 years of beginning the work, कि जब आपने वो काम स्टार्ट किया था, it is a time frame that is given in the last 3 years, and the research and preparing for the work, it should also be reported. So these are basically the guidelines of the Springer. What I'm showing you, this is one of the major guidelines of the Springer general, that basically abide by the rules of the Pope, जो मैंने आपसे starting में discuss किए थे. तो आपको जो है लास्ट 3 years से कि जब आपने काम स्टार्ट किया एंड व्हेन यू हैव रिपोर्टेड दैट पर्टिकुलर वर्क, सो इफ देयर इज एनी सॉर्ट ऑफ अ फाइनेंशियल और नॉन फाइनेंशियल इंटरेस्ट related to the same, that has to be keep into picture. So interest outside the 3 year frame must be disclosed if they could reasonably be perceived as influencing the submitted work. आप ये कहें कि ये 3 year का ही एक स्पैन है, नहीं, लेकिन अगर कुछ ऐसा आपने प्रेजेंट किया है, ठीक है, जिसका कोई परसीव्ड इन्फ्लुएंस है और उसमें टाइम स्पैन जो है वो 3 year से ज्यादा है, तब भी आपको वो जो है इंटरेस्ट वो बताना पड़ेगा. So disclosure of interest, they provide a complete and transparent process and they help the readers form their own judgment of potential bias. यही मैंने आपको बताया कि आपने एक पर्टिकुलर बल्ब बना दिया और आपने कहा दिस इज एन इको फ्रेंडली बल्ब, फाइन, बिकॉज यू आर ऑन द बोर्ड मेंबर ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर फर्म एंड यू आर रिप्रेजेंटिंग दैट पर्टिकुलर थिंग, और आपने उसके लिए एक रिसर्च पेपर बना दिया, बट यू हैव टू डिस्क्लोज दैट पर्टिकुलर थिंग दैट आई एम अ बोर्ड मेंबर ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. देन ओनली जो रिव्यूअर होगा, जो रीडर होगा, वो उसके ऊपर एक अनबाइज्ड decision ले पाएगा कि is this person whatever is saying is right or wrong. So I think this point is now clear with everybody. And this is not meant to imply that a financial relationship with an organization that sponsored the research or compensation received from consultancy work is inappropriate. ऐसा नहीं है कि मतलब आपने कोई कंसल्टेंसी करी या कुछ करा और आपको कोई फाइनेंशियल अवार्ड मिल रहा है, तो दिस इज नॉट इनअप्रोप्रिएट, बट यू हैव टू डिस्क्लोज दैट पर्टिकुलर थिंग whenever you are presenting something or you are submitting something to the publication house. So I think this point is now clear with everybody. Okay. Okay. So, what type of interest they should be considered and disclosed? Fine. So they basically include the funding projects. Funding में हमारे पास क्या आता है? For example, there is some research grant from funding agencies. Fine. That might include some equipment, supplies. Fine. And all these things, fine. So the funding is basically one of the major interests that could be there. Employment, I have already told ki if you are a part of a particular organization, so and you are doing the research for the same, so employment, and if that particular research fail, then you might lose financially. That is another important aspect for the same. So employment and funding are two major areas that should be considered and that needs to be disclosed. Okay. Okay, interest that needs to be disclosed. Again, when I'm talking of financial interest, for example, stocks or shares, मैंने आपको अभी बताया कि if you have some sort of a shares in that particular company that may gain or lose financially through publication of that particular manuscript, fine, that also comes into picture. So I think we have already discussed this particular terminology, and we have also discussed now non-financial interest. So I'll not go into that now. Now, coming to this particular part, this is again a very important thing, that which articles require the disclosure statements. मैंने आपको पहले ही बताया कि हमारे पास एक disclosure statements होनी चाहिए जहां पे मैं बताऊं कि जो भी मैं आर्टिकल प्रेजेंट कर रहा हूं उसके क्या क्या कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स ऑफ इंटरेस्ट हैं, तो मुझे किन आर्टिकल्स में ये डिस्क्लोजर स्टेटमेंट्स लगानी है. देयर माइट बी अ क्वेश्चन दैट माइट बी आस्क्ड कि इन व्हिच आर्टिकल्स आई नीड टू submit the disclosure statements. So this is a list of the articles that I'm telling you that require a disclosure statement. So first is that the primary research articles require a disclosure statement. जो हमारे primary research articles होते हैं वहां पे हमें disclosure statements लगाने हैं. जो हमारे रिव्यू आर्टिकल्स होते हैं, दे प्रेजेंट एन एक्सपर्ट सिंथेसिस ऑफ द एविडेंस एंड मे बी ट्रीटेड एज एन ऑथोरेटिव वर्क ऑन अ सब्जेक्ट, फाइन, दे आल्सो रिक्वायर अ डिस्क्लोजर स्टेटमेंट. तो मुझे रिव्यू आर्टिकल्स में भी लगाने हैं. जो हमारे दूसरे आर्टिकल्स हैं, फॉर एग्जांपल एडिटोरियल्स, बुक्स, फाइन, they that might take the content that is dependent on something, कि मैंने एक बुक लिखी, कुछ लिखा, मैं कंटेंट ले रहा हूँ अलग अलग जगह से, तो वहां पे भी मुझे क्या लगाना है, आई हैव टू राइट अ डिस्क्लोजर स्टेटमेंट फॉर द सेम. ठीक है. इन एडिशन टू द अबव रिक्वायरमेंट्स, फंडिंग इंफॉर्मेशन. ठीक है, फंडिंग इंफॉर्मेशन मैंने आपको पहले ही बताई, दैट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. तो दीज आर द वेरियस थिंग्स दैट नीड्स टू बी इंक्लूडेड, कि जब भी आप कोई प्राइमरी रिसर्च आर्टिकल लिख रहे हैं, जब भी आप कोई रिव्यू रिसर्च आर्टिकल लिख रहे हैं, आप कोई बुक्स लिख रहे हैं, एंड इफ यू आर टेकिंग द कंटेंट फ्रॉम डिफरेंट थिंग्स, फाइन, देन you have to articulate the same in your disclosure statements. Is this point clear with everybody? Right. I hope this point is clear with everybody. So now, this is how you are going to write this particular terminology. Suppose my research or my paper is getting some sort of a fund. Fine. So this is the template that you are going to use. This is again prescribed by the COPE, that is provide funding. Fine. That I received the financial support from this under the grant agreement. This study was funded by this work was supported by this and this. So this is the sort of a template that you are going to use as a conflict of interest in case of funding. So moving forward, if it is non-funding, then how I'm going to write that? The author didn't receive any support from the organization for the submitted work. No funding was received. No funding was received for conducting this particular study, and no grants were received for the same. So these are the two different templates that you can use while you are stating that whether it is a funded research or it is a non-funded research, that needs to be there in the disclosure statement. Then there could be financial and non-financial interest that I've already told you what are they. But how I'm going to show them in my cover letter is that, for example, if there is a financial interest, then I'm going to say that author A received the research support from company A. Fine. Author B has received a speaker honorarium from the company this and this. Author C is consultant to this particular company. If there are multiple authors in the same, so these are this is how I'm going to write my conflict of interest template. This is just a template that how you are going to write these particular conflicts of interest. जैसे आपके पेपर के अंदर 4 authors हैं, 3 authors हैं, fine, and somebody might be a board member of some particular company. Somebody is getting some sort of a consultation fees from that particular company. Somebody is a consultant to that particular company. So you have to write these particular things in the disclosure statements in this particular template. Fine. And if there is no non-financial interest associated, then it is written that it is an unpaid member of the committee. So these are the basic terminologies or the basic templates that needs to be followed. अगर आपके पास आप कहते हैं कुछ भी नहीं है डिक्लेयर करने का, fine, then you have to write these particular terminologies that the authors have no relevant financial or non-financial interest to disclose. कि आपके पास कोई भी फाइनेंशियल या नॉन फाइनेंशियल इंटरेस्ट नहीं है जो मैं डिस्क्लोज करना चाहता हूँ. All the authors certify that they have no affiliations or involvement in any organizations related to the same. So this is again a template. I'll be just sharing the slides with you. You can go through all these templates and you can use them as a part of your study whenever you are presenting something. So now this is another important thing, statement. So basically I'm showing this statement of the Springer General, that what is this statement? That is conflict of interest statement as part of this general. So all the manuscripts for articles, original research reports, editorials, comments, review books, and letters are submitted to the general must be accompanied by a conflict of interest disclosure statements or a declaration by the author that they don't have any conflicts of interest to declare. So this is the statement that is given by the general कि जनरल भी यही चाहता है कि आप जो भी आर्टिकल सबमिट करेंगे तो उसके साथ आप क्या करेंगे, you will be enclosing a letter that there is no conflict of interest to declare. If there is a conflict of interest to declare, they must be privately disclosed to the editor at the time of submission. So you can, I think, go through this particular slide. If there is anything you need to ask, you can ask, or then I'll move forward. Okay. So moving forward now, some of the examples of this is that that you are getting some sort of a conflicts of interest. You have an interest in influencing the government. You are a senior editorial position, fine, at a university library, so you can recommend a few books regarding the same. So all of these things, they basically constitute, they are some examples of conflicts of interest. Now, this is one of the key point that I like to discuss is that is a COPE flow chart. Okay, I think, is it viewable to everybody? Visible clearly to everybody? Yes, is it visible clear to everybody? Okay, so I hope it is visible to everybody. Now, basically, what this flow chart shows is that how a general goes through the undisclosed conflict of interest. कि फॉर एग्जाम्पल आपने एक पेपर सबमिट करा दिया, ठीक है, और आपने उसके कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट बताए नहीं कि उसके क्या क्या ऑथर्स हैं, आपका उसमें क्या फाइनेंशियल इंटरेस्ट है, उसमें आपका क्या नॉन फाइनेंशियल इंटरेस्ट है, आपने उन चीज़ों को डिस्क्लोज नहीं किया, फाइन। तो उस केस में क्या होगा? उस केस में वो जनरल जो है वो कैसे उस पर रिएक्ट करेगा? सो दिस इज अ फ्लो चार्ट दैट इज गिवन बाय कोप, that is committee on publication ethics, that how the general is going to work in that particular direction, कि जनरल उस वे में कैसे काम करेगा। फॉर एग्जाम्पल, एक रीडर ने इन्फॉर्म किया, फाइन, टू द एडिटर और द ऑथर्स, editor of the authors, that there is an undisclosed conflict of interest, fine। तो आप क्या करोगे? यू आर थैंकिंग द रीडर एंड एज अ member of a general, and you say that I'll investigate that particular thing, fine। Then the next step what will happen is that you again contacted that particular author, आपने उस author को जो है वो communicate किया regarding the same, कि what is this true, fine। तो यहाँ पे आपकी दो possibilities हो सकती हैं, क्या एक तो author deny करेगा, ठीक है, या ऑथर क्या करेगा, वो रेलेवेंट डिटेल्स वो क्या करेगा, सप्लाई करेगा। यही दोनों पॉइंट्स हो सकते हैं ना, कि अगर आपने कोई पेपर सबमिट करा और आपने डिस्क्लोज किए नहीं उसके कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स ऑफ इंटरेस्ट, तो उस केस में जनरल कैसे उसको अप्रोच करेगा? कि मान लीजिए कोई थर्ड पर्सन आ गया और उसने कहा कि देयर आर अ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट, अनडिस्क्लोज्ड कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट इन दिस पर्टिकुलर रिसर्च पेपर, तो जनरल क्या करेगा? ही इज गोइंग टू आस्क यू वेदर देयर इज अ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट फॉर द सेम और नॉट। तो अगर देयर इज समथिंग, आपने कहा कि देयर इज समथिंग, ऑथर ने क्या करा? डिनाई किया, या दूसरा केस क्या होगा कि आप सप्लाई कर दोगे रेलेवेंट डिटेल्स, फाइन। इन दैट पर्टिकुलर केस दे विल रीअसेस द आर्टिकल, कि आपने चीजें सप्लाई कर दी, तो वो रीअसेस करेंगे आर्टिकल को, ठीक है, और उसके बाद वो उसे पब्लिश करेंगे या नहीं करेंगे, कि कंसिडर वेदर this conflict of interest unduly affected the article or the peer review। क्या ये पॉइंट क्लियर हो रहा है? दिस इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फ्लो चार्ट दैट आई एम एक्सप्लेनिंग, कि अगर फॉर एग्जांपल आपने एक पेपर सबमिट कर दिया, ठीक है, और उस पेपर के अंदर कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट है, आपने उसको डिस्क्लोज किया नहीं, और कोई थर्ड पर्सन उस चीज को डिस्क्लोज करता है टू द जनरल, तो जनरल आपसे पूछेगा कि इज देयर एनी conflict of interest regarding the same, and if you say there is a conflict of interest, they will do कि they are going to reassess that particular article based on that particular undisclosed conflict of interest। वो उसे क्या करेंगे? reassess करेंगे, और फिर वो क्या करेंगे? reassess करने के बाद they are going to consider whether this particular conflict of interest unduly affected the article, कि क्या इस कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट के कारण क्या इस आर्टिकल को कोई क्या अफेक्ट हुआ, ठीक है, उसका पीयर रिव्यू क्या रहा, इज इट अफेक्टेड और इट इज नॉट अफेक्टेड बाय दैट पर्टिकुलर कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट। सो दिस इज व्हेन द ऑथर सप्लाइज द रेलेवेंट डिटेल। और अगर मान लीजिए आपका कोई अनडिस्क्लोज कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट है एंड यू डिनाइड कि मेरा तो सर इसके अंदर कोई कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट नहीं है, ऑथर डिनाइज, देन यू हैव टू एक्सप्लेन द जनरल पॉलिसी, कि आपकी जनरल की पॉलिसी क्या है, कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट की डेफिनेशन क्या है, और साइन स्टेटमेंट लेंगे वो ऑथर से रिगार्डिंग द सेम, दैट देयर इज नो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स ऑफ इंटरेस्ट। लेकिन अगर फिर भी कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट फाउंड होता है तो वो दोबारा से रीअसेस करेंगे, और अगर वो नहीं फाउंड होता कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट तो आपका जो पब्लिकेशन है वो स्टैंड करेगा और वो इन्फॉर्म करेंगे रीडर को अबाउट द आउटकम। सो दिस इज अ वेरी गुड फ्लो चार्ट आई वुड से, फाइन, दैट डिस्कस द एंटायर फ्लो, कि पूरा का पूरा जो हमारा फ्लो है ये कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट का उसको एक्सप्लेन कर रहा है। अभी भी किसी को इस फ्लो चार्ट के अंदर कोई क्लैरिटी ना हो तो यू कैन आस्क द सेम।
Sir, actually, it is not too much visible because it is too much minute. Fonts are minute, sir. You can make it landscape if it is possible.
Is it visible now? I have just
Yes, yes.
zoomed.
You can little bit make more zoom. It is 133. You can make it 140 or something.
Okay, is it visible now? I think it should be
Yes, yes,
visible
yes,
now.
yes, yes. Sir.
So I think if anybody wants to ask anything from this particular flow chart,
So from here students are asking to repeat once.
okay. So basically इस फ्लो चार्ट में हमारे पास क्या है कि मुझे एज अ ऑथर, अगर मान लीजिए मैंने एक पेपर सबमिट किया और मैंने डिस्क्लोज नहीं किया कि कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट क्या है। कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट का क्या मतलब कि इसका किसके अंदर किस इस पेपर से मुझे क्या इंटरेस्ट मिल रहा है, फाइनेंशियल या नॉन फाइनेंशियल वे में। तो अगर मैंने कुछ ऐसा पेपर सबमिट करा और मैंने बताया नहीं है, जो मैंने आपको बताया था कि आपको डिस्क्लोजर स्टेटमेंट देनी होगी, तो अगर कोई थर्ड पर्सन जनरल को बताता है कि देयर इज अ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट एसोसिएटेड विद दैट पर्टिकुलर पेपर, कि ये जो ऑथर है इसको ये फाइनेंशियल असिस्टेंस मिल रहा है, इसको ये नॉन फाइनेंशियल असिस्टेंस मिल रहा है, तो उस केस में जनरल क्या करेगा? तो जनरल क्या करेगा, वो सबसे पहले ऑथर से या आपसे कम्युनिकेट करेगा और एक्सप्रेस करेगा कंसर्न रिगार्डिंग द सेम, कि क्या
तो यहाँ
क्या।
एक क्वेरी है सोनू की।
हाँ जी।
शी इज आस्किंग कि ऑथर डिनाई कर देता है तो क्या होगा?
हाँ, तो वही मैंने आपको बताया कि अगर आपने डिनाई कर दिया कि कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट नहीं है, आपने डिनाई कर दिया कि कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट नहीं है, तो उस केस में क्या होगा, जनरल क्या करेगा, आपको पहले तो पूरी की पूरी कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट की डेफिनेशन बताएगा कि ये होता है कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट। ठीक है, फिर वो क्या करेंगे, दे विल ऑब्टेन अ साइंड स्टेटमेंट फ्रॉम यू। आपसे एक साइंड स्टेटमेंट लेंगे कि आपने ये लिखा है कि कोई भी कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट नहीं है। लेकिन यहाँ पे भी बात खत्म नहीं होगी। मान लीजिए आपने साइंड स्टेटमेंट दे दी, उसके बाद भी जो है कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट मिल गया। आर यू गेटिंग द पॉइंट? कि आपने साइन स्टेटमेंट दे दी कि सर कोई कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट नहीं है, लेकिन फिर भी कोई कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट मिल गया, तो फिर क्या होगा, जनरल फिर से आपके आर्टिकल को रीअसेस करेगा। ठीक है, और जो बेस्ड ऑन दैट अनडिस्क्लोज्ड कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट, उसको दोबारा से आर्टिकल को पढ़ेगा, उसे रीअसेस करेगा और चेक करेगा कि जब ये कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट है तो उसके कारण किसी पर्टिकुलर सेक्शन को कोई अनड्यू बेनिफिट तो नहीं मिल रहा। अगर उसको कोई अनड्यू बेनिफिट नहीं मिल रहा तो वो उसे पब्लिश करेंगे, नहीं तो वो उसे पब्लिश नहीं करेंगे। बताइए क्या अब ये पॉइंट क्लियर है?
Yes, sir.
और अगर ऐसा होता है कि भाई,
Response is yes.
ओके
Response is coming yes.
ओके फाइन। सो अगर ऐसा होता है कि मैंने जो है स्टार्टिंग में ही देख लिया कि देयर इज अ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट और मैंने नहीं बताया, लेकिन अब मैं पब्लिकेशन हाउस को बताना चाहता हूँ, तो आप वो भी कर सकते हैं कि आप जो है रेलेवेंट डिटेल्स सप्लाई कर दीजिए दैट दिस इज द कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट सर, आई एम सॉरी फॉर द सेम, फाइन। और वो क्या करेंगे, दे आर गोइंग टू कंसिडर, दे आर गोइंग टू अगेन रीअसेस द आर्टिकल, उस आर्टिकल को दोबारा से रीअसेस करेंगे बेस्ड ऑन दैट पर्टिकुलर अनडिस्क्लोज्ड कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट, और फिर वो चेक करेंगे कि क्या इस पर्टिकुलर कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट के बाद क्या इसने किसी सेक्शन को हेल्प करी या नहीं करी। मान लीजिए आपने कोई मेडिसिन बनाई, ठीक है, और आपने वो मेडिसिन एक कंपनी के लिए बनाई एंड देयर माइट बी सम सॉर्ट ऑफ अ फाइनेंशियल मोटिव फॉर द सेम, फाइन। तो क्या वो जो मेडिसिन है वो किसी पर्टिकुलर सेक्शन ऑफ द सोसाइटी के लिए ही बनी हुई है? मैं आपको इसका एक एग्जांपल देता हूँ। देयर इज, हम एक छोटी सी मेडिसिन लेते हैं डिस्प्रिन, एंड आई थिंक हमारे पास वो 5 रुपए का एक पूरा सेशे आता है डिस्प्रिन का। देयर इज एन अदर मेडिसिन सेम एज डिस्प्रिन, उसका काम भी सेम है, but that is made by another very reputed company. Fine, that is Eli Lilly. शायद उसका नाम किसी ने ना सुना हो, Eli Lilly. तो वो जो एक मेडिसिन है सर दर्द की, they are selling it for the same strip, they are selling it for 150 rupees. The salt is same, everything is same, but they are targeting a particular section of the society. Fine. So this is how different things are there. So whenever you are doing a research, you should be of the view telling in a disclosure statement कि क्या ये किसी particular section को undue affect कर रही है, किसी particular institute को undue affect कर रही है. तो यही मैंने आपको बताया कि हमारे पास जो भी रिसर्च है उसके फाइनेंशियल या नॉन फाइनेंशियल दोनों जो है मोटिव्स क्लियर होने चाहिए डिस्क्लोजर स्टेटमेंट में. तो दिस फ्लो चार्ट यू कैन से इज द एंटायर क्रक्स ऑफ पूरा का पूरा उसका निचोड़ है कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट का. तो आई विल बी शेयरिंग द स्लाइड्स विद यू एंड यू कैन गो थ्रू दिस पर्टिकुलर फ्लो चार्ट फॉर द सेम. फाइन. अगर अभी भी इसमें किसी को कोई डाउट है तो पूछ सकते.
There is a query from Sonu.
Anji.
She is saying, she or he is saying that we need to give it in our PhD research or in research paper.
Look, it depends from institutes to institutes, fine, and some institutes might ask in PhD, but I don't think most of the institutes are looking for that particular disclosure statements in a PhD degree. You can accompany that, but you should now ask the evaluation committee of your institute regarding the same. There might be different patterns for the same. अलग-अलग कॉलेजेस के कुछ अलग पैटर्न्स हो सकते हैं, लेकिन मैं जो है यहाँ पे सिर्फ जनरल्स की बात कर रहा हूँ, तो मैं उस केस में ज़्यादा नहीं बता पाऊंगा. शायद इंस्टीट्यूट टू इंस्टीट्यूट इट माइट वेरी, दैट सम इंस्टीट्यूट्स माइट बी टेकिंग some sort of this disclosure statement at the same. But nowadays I think after this particular thing that is in the syllabus, that has been prescribed in the syllabus just for the same, so I think most of the organizations or most of the institutes are now taking this particular disclosure statements in every article that we are submitting, because sometimes it could be a type of a primary research where we are doing, so you have to stand for the same. Okay.
So hoping that Sonu you are able to get your answer. ये फिलहाल जो है जर्नल्स के लिए एप्लीकेबल है. सर हैज ऑलरेडी एक्सप्लेन कि ज्यादातर जब जर्नल्स होते हैं उसमें कोई कंफ्लिक्ट आता है तो जर्नल्स वालों को कंफ्लिक्ट जहाँ पर लड़ाई या द्वंद्व हो सकता है, विचार का मतभेद हो सकता है, वो स्टेटमेंट्स पहले ही क्लियर कर दी जाए ताकि आगे कोई विचारों का मतभेद ना हो. So sir please you can continue.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think now I'll discuss some of the multiple choice questions and I want everybody to be interactive, कि सभी लोग थोड़ा सा interactive रहें, कि थोड़ा सा पता लगे कि
Sir, you are requested before proceeding on, do not tell them the right answer because it will be added in the feedback link with assignments.
Okay, fine. So I'll not be telling the right answers. So what you can do is that you can just take your pen and paper with you and you can mark that particular thing, whether it is right or wrong, so that I can also see that. And you can even share the same on this by screen sharing on or to the ma'am, Sushila ma'am. So what the
Sir,
first...
are you able to see the chat box?
Yeah, sure. I'm able to see the chat box. Okay.
You will get the right response there.
Okay, fine. So just let me.
But do not disclose the right answer.
Okay.
Please
क्या बाद में भी disclose ना करूं? First, let them tell.
See,
and
we will disclose after they are submitting the feedback with assignments.
Okay. So the first question is, what is a conflict of interest may occur when a researcher could benefit from the research he or she is conducting. A conflict of interest may occur when a researcher could benefit from the research he or she is conducting. It could be publicly, it could be financially, it could be personally, or it could be academically. So you have to write a particular answer for the same. So anybody who is going to tell? Okay, some people are Anshika, financially, personally, financially. Okay, okay. Good. Let's see what is the right answer, and ma'am is going to tell you at the end. So it could be financially, it could be personally also, and it could be academically also. It could be publicly also. So uh, don't you think that all the options could be right? All the options
They
could
are
be right.
trying to put their
Yeah.
luck into such
Look,
chances.
I think after listening to this particular topic, you can check that all the 4 points could be right. Fine. So moving forward to the next question. Okay. When working collaboratively with other researchers, कि आप और किसी के साथ collaborate कर रहे हैं, it is important to discuss the issues of dash before writing up the research report. आप जो है किस तरह के इश्यूज को रिपोर्ट करोगे? ऑथरशिप के इश्यूज को रिपोर्ट करोगे, डेटा फैब्रिकेशन के इश्यूज को रिपोर्ट करोगे, पार्टिसिपेंट रिक्रूटमेंट के इश्यूज को रिपोर्ट करोगे, या इन्फॉर्म्ड कंसेंट के बारे में डिस्कस करोगे? दैट व्हेन कोलैबोरेटिंग विद अदर रिसर्चर्स, कि आप दूसरों के साथ कोलैबोरेट कर रहे हो, तो इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट टू डिस्कस द इश्यूज ऑफ व्हाट. Yes, anybody who is going to answer that in the chat, let me see. Okay. Sarita Yadav is saying authorship. Okay. Chandan is again saying authorship. Okay. Suman is again saying authorship. Okay. Okay. So क्या आप डेटा फैब्रिकेशन के बारे में नहीं बताएंगे कि अगर आपने कहीं से डेटा यूज किया है, क्या आप डेटा फैब्रिकेशन के बारे में नहीं बताएंगे कि कौन, इसके बारे में नहीं बताएंगे कि किन किन पार्टिसिपेंट्स को आपने रिक्रूट किया है रिसर्च के लिए, क्यों रिक्रूट किया है, क्या उनका कोई कॉन्फ्लिक्टिंग इंटरेस्ट था कि नहीं? तो यस, इन इन पॉइंट्स को भी सोचिए एंड देन यू कैन कम एट द राइट डिसीजन. फाइन. ओके, मूविंग टू द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन. Moving to the next question, that which of these is an example of fabricating the data? Inviting the participants consent via email, writing field notes for observations that didn't occur, using online surveys for data collection, using qualitative data analysis software. इन चारों में से जो है कौन सा एग्जाम्पल है फैब्रिकेशन ऑफ डेटा का? कि आपने फील्ड ऑब्जर्वेशंस करी लेकिन उसके बारे में वो करी नहीं और लिख दिया फील्ड ऑब्जर्वेशंस करी, इनवाइट किया पार्टिसिपेंट्स को बट विद द कंसेंट वाया ईमेल, ऑनलाइन सर्वे किया, qualitative data analysis. Yes, who is going to give the right answer? Let me see. So a lot of people are answering. Okay, Ritu is saying B. Okay, Chandan is again saying B. So yes, I think इस क्वेश्चन में हम ज्यादा डिटेल में अगर नहीं जाएं तो this could be there, but this particular terminology that inviting the participants consent via email, this is also a very it is also a point that could be fabricated in a lot of research, that I got the consent via email. So look into that particular point also. Okay. Now moving forward, which of the following is not always not a way to secure your data set? कि अगर मुझे अपने data set को secure करना है तो इनमें से कौन सा तरीका नहीं है? Storing the files on a publicly available Facebook group page, keeping the printed files data on the desk in your classrooms, storing electronic files in a password protected computer, or storing electronic data on your public blog. इनमें से जो कौन सा, विच ऑफ द फॉलोइंग इज नॉट अ वे टू सिक्योर योर डेटा सेट, कि जो सही तरीका नहीं है अपने डेटा सेट को सिक्योर करने का, कि आप उसे पब्लिकली रख दें, प्रिंटेड वे में रख दें अपने क्लासरूम में, ठीक है, अपने पब्लिक ब्लॉग पे रख दें या अपने कंप्यूटर पे रख दें विद पासवर्ड प्रोटेक्टेड कंप्यूटर. व्हाट कुड बी देयर दैट इज नॉट अ सिक्योर वे? Okay, let me see who's answering the same. Okay, Mehak is saying A, B and D. Okay. There could be multiple things. Good, Max. Okay. Sushil is again saying A, B, and D. All except C, Preeti. Okay. Okay. So let's see what could be the right answer. A few people have answered that. So let's move to the next question. So I think it is a good way to interact with each one of you. Okay, you do not need to disclose a potential conflict of interest when you are seeking the approval from a research study from an institutional review board. देखिए ये क्या क्वेश्चन है कि you do not need to disclose a potential of interest when you are seeking the approval for a research study from an institutional review board. अभी ऐसा किसी ने पूछा भी था, तो क्या मुझे डिस्क्लोज करना है या नहीं करना जब मैं किसी इंस्टीट्यूशन के रिव्यू बोर्ड से कुछ मतलब कुछ प्रेजेंट कर रहा हूं, तो क्या उस केस में मुझे कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट बताना है या नहीं बताना? व्हाट कुड बी द राइट आंसर? इज इट ट्रू और फॉल्स? सो लेट मी सी हु इज आंसरिंग द सेम. ओके, सुमन, फॉल्स, नहीं बताना. और अगर if there is some sort of a conflict of interest statement that I've already said that might be there, we need to tell. Okay, Sarita. So आप इसका सही आंसर देखिए. Fine, I'll be supplying this particular questions to you. So you need to go through all these particular MCQs. So what is an assent? An assent describes a process whereby a minor agrees to participate in a research study. कई बार ऐसा हो सकता है कि हमारी रिसर्च में कोई माइनर है जिसकी एज जो है 18 ईयर से कम है और वो पार्टिसिपेट करता है स्टडी में, तो क्या मैं इसको असेंट कहता हूँ? क्या आपने वर्ड सुना है? व्हाट इज असेंट? ओके, लेट मी सी हु इज आंसरिंग दिस पर्टिकुलर टर्मिनोलॉजी. ओके, सुशील ट्रू. ओके, अंशिका ट्रू. Ankita, okay. So I think you have to go for this particular term and you have to check what is assent. Fine. Assent क्या होता है इसके बारे में एक बार थोड़ा सा देखिए. It refers to an individual's ability to understand and retain the information which becomes particularly important when sharing the purpose of a study with a potential participant. कि जब मैं पर्पस ऑफ अ स्टडी को किसी पार्टिसिपेंट के साथ शेयर करता हूँ, तो इसको मैं क्या कहता हूँ? इंडिविजुअल की एबिलिटी को. क्या इंडिविजुअल की एबिलिटी को मैं डलनेस कह सकता हूँ? क्या उसको कैपेसिटी कह सकता हूँ? या इनएफिशिएंसी कह सकता हूँ? या एनेबल कह सकता हूँ? व्हाट कुड बी द राइट वर्ड्स फॉर द सेम? आप क्वेश्चन को ही ध्यान से पढ़िए, आपको आंसर मिलेगा. इट रेफर्स टू इंडिविजुअल्स एबिलिटी टू अंडरस्टैंड. तो इंडिविजुअल्स एबिलिटी को आप कौन से वर्ड से बताएंगे? इज इट डलनेस, इज इट कैपेसिटी, इनएफिशिएंसी और एनेबल, that he is unable to do that? So let me see who is answering this particular thing right. So a lot of things. Anshika is saying capacity. Chandan is saying enable. Okay, he is unable to do that. Divya is saying capacity. Okay. So moving forward. So the process of informing and getting the agreement from a research participant. कि आपने किसी से एग्री करा कि गेटिंग एग्रीमेंट फ्रॉम अ रिसर्च पार्टिसिपेंट्स टू पार्टिसिपेट इन अ स्टडी, कि वो स्टडी में पार्टिसिपेट कर सकते हैं, तो इसको आप क्या कहते हो? डिसेंट, कंसेंट, फॉरबिड और डेमर. सो व्हाट कुड बी द राइट आंसर फॉर द सेम? कि यू आर गेटिंग द एग्रीमेंट फॉर द सेम. So I think most of the people should able to tell. Okay, some people are saying consent. Okay. Okay. So let's move forward to the next question. So the type of consent is preferred from form of consent where an individual being asked to participate in a research gives their consent directly to the researcher. जहाँ पे मैं directly रिसर्चर को कंसेंट दे देता हूँ, तो उसको मैं क्या कहता हूँ? इन्फॉर्म्ड कंसेंट कहता हूँ, डायरेक्ट कंसेंट कहता हूँ, या फैब्रिकेटिंग कंसेंट कहता हूँ? व्हाट कुड बी द राइट आंसर्स? कि जहां हमने अपना जो कंसेंट है वो रिसर्चर को दे दिया, तो इसको हम क्या कह सकते हैं? सम पीपल आर सेइंग इन्फॉर्म्ड कंसेंट. ओके, पूनम इज सेइंग इन्फॉर्म्ड, राजेश इज सेइंग इन्फॉर्म्ड. ओके, Can't it be called as a direct consent? डायरेक्ट कंसेंट किसे कहता हूं मैं? आप इन दोनों टर्मिनोलॉजीज को एक बार देखिएगा कि वेदर इट इज इन्फॉर्म्ड कंसेंट और डायरेक्ट कंसेंट. Okay, fabrication occurs when a practitioner, scholar makes up or create the data. वो डेटा को क्रिएट करता है in order to support their laws, results, publishing और words. Fabrication जो है इन चारों में से किस में होता है? What could be the right answer? Okay, let me see results. Okay, results publishing. Okay, Ankita is saying publishing. Suman is saying results. Okay, Poonam is again saying publishing. So it could have more than one answers. Fabricating could be in the results. It could be in the publishing. It could even be in the words कि मैं fabricate कर रहा हूँ किसी words को, ठीक है, उसकी जगह कुछ synonyms लिख रहा हूँ, तो वो भी हमारा fabrication में आता है. Okay, you can look for the right answers. It refers to a process of informing the participant about his or her rights as a research participant. अब ये देखिए वही क्वेश्चन आ गया जो मैंने आपसे पूछा था इन्फॉर्म्ड कंसेंट और डायरेक्ट कंसेंट के बीच में. जब मैं पार्टिसिपेंट्स को उसके राइट्स के बारे में बताता हूं तो इस चीज को मैं क्या कहता हूं? जब मैं पार्टिसिपेंट को उसके राइट्स के बारे में बताता हूं तो उसे क्या कहता हूं? ओके, अब आप कह रहे हैं इन्फॉर्म्ड कंसेंट, उसमें भी इन्फॉर्म्ड कंसेंट कह रहे थे. सो व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन इन्फॉर्म्ड कंसेंट एंड डायरेक्ट कंसेंट? सो यू आर गोइंग टू चेक ऑन द सेम. इन दोनों पे आप देखेंगे और फिर आप इसे आंसर कर पाएंगे. ओके, सो जस्ट मूविंग फॉरवर्ड, लेट मी सी. सो इंस्टीट्यूशनल रिव्यू बोर्ड is a group of individuals who are authorized by an institution such as university to determine whether a proposed research subject or study complies of federal and institutional research regulation and ethical professional standard. तो आपको ये पता होना चाहिए कि institutional review board क्या होता है, तो तभी आप इसको आंसर कर पाएंगे कि वो लोग हैं जो ऑथराइज्ड हैं कि जो आपने प्रपोज किया है रिसर्च स्टडी वो उस यूनिवर्सिटी के रूल्स और रेगुलेशंस और उसके एथिकल प्रोफेशनल स्टैंडर्ड्स को फॉलो करती है या नहीं करती. सो क्या इसे कहते हैं इंस्टीट्यूशनल रिव्यू बोर्ड? लेट मी सी हाउ मेनी पीपल आर आंसरिंग द सेम. ओके, मोनिका इज सेइंग ट्रू, सुमन इज सेइंग ट्रू. तो इसके बारे में पढ़िएगा कि इंस्टीट्यूशनल रिव्यू बोर्ड क्या होता है. फाइन. Okay, it occurs when a practitioner intentionally or unintentionally misrepresents their data set. ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है कि आप इंटेंशनली कर रहे हो या अनइंटेंशनली कर रहे हो अपने डेटा सेट को मिस रिप्रेजेंट, की मुझे कुछ रिजल्ट चाहिए उसके लिए मैं उसे फैब्रिकेट कर रहा हूँ. तो इसको क्या कहते हैं? इसे ऑडियो कहते हैं, मैसेजिंग, ऑरली, या इसे कॉलिंग, क्या कहते हैं? व्हाट इज द राइट टर्मिनोलॉजी फॉर द सेम? कि आप क्या कर रहे हो, इंटेंशनली या अनइंटेंशनली उसको जो है वो कर रहे हैं. तो आई cannot see that anybody kindly clear the question. Question is very clear. Question is saying कि एज अ प्रैक्टिशनर और स्कॉलर आप मिस रिप्रेजेंट कर रहे हैं अपने डेटा सेट को इंटेंशनली या अनइंटेंशनली. तो इस टर्मिनोलॉजी को इन चारों में से क्या कहते हैं? ऑडियो कहते हैं, मैसेजिंग कहते हैं, मैसेजिंग कहते हैं, ओरली कहते हैं, या कॉलिंग कहते हैं? सो आई थिंक यू हैव टू लुक फॉर द सेम. ठीक है. ओके, सम पीपल आर रितु इज सेइंग. ओके, रितु एंड सिमरन मैसेजिंग. ओके, गुड आंसर. ओके, okay, so let me move forward. Okay, the deliberate use of someone else's words or ideas or thoughts is called as showness, plagiarism, copy paste, or none of the above. I think most of the people should be able to tell that. Okay, so I'm going to move forward. The third party consent occurs when someone other than the individual being asked to in the study gives consent on the participant's behalf. Now this is a bit complicated कि third party consent की हमें कब जरूरत पड़ती है कि when someone other than the individual being asked in the study give consent on the participant's behalf. What is this called? Excluded, participate, think, or run out? Okay, so let me see how many people are answering the same. Okay, plagiarism is fine. That was the last thing. Okay, run out, participate. थर्ड पार्टी कंसेंट की बात कर रहे हैं हम तो पार्टिसिपेट ओके लॉट ऑफ स्टूडेंट्स आर सेइंग पार्टिसिपेट सो यू हैव गोइंग टू लुक फॉर द सेम कि थर्ड पार्टी कंसेंट में आपका क्या आता है सो लेट मी सी ओके so I'm thanking each one of you for sparing your time for the same and this is what we discussed for the day that the conflicts of interest that could be with individuals with organizations with personal benefits with simultaneous roles, with decisions, with results, ethical, unethical, illegal. So I think we discussed each and every concept of this, and I hope every one of you have gathered some information regarding the same. So I'm thank you for sparing your time and listening to me. So yes, over to you, ma'am. You can take over.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for your deliberative efforts and highly informative session with interaction with the participants, hoping that they have got through the conflicts, how to resolve them when they are facing the publishing issues.
Thank you, ma'am.
So practicing with ethics, you will not surely you will not go for some problems or conflicts. So before going on publication in any journal, please go through the website, read their guidelines, check the information shown on the website on the particular journal. You will surely not get into the conflicts. If it is still there, sir has already explained the fundas and the points which are required to be covered by a researcher. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Anand, sir. We
Thank
will
you.
have another session on day 10, sorry, day 9 tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yes, hoping that participants you have enjoyed the session, get a lot of information from this session. तो उम्मीद है आप लोगों को conflict of interest समझ में आया होगा और conflict of interest यानी कि जब बहुत सारे interest इकट्ठे हो जाते हैं अलग अलग लोगों के सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट भी हो सकते हैं ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल इंटरेस्ट भी हो सकते हैं वो आपके किसी जर्नल से रिलेटेड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन से रिलेटेड किसी संस्था से रिलेटेड कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स इकट्ठे हो सकते हैं तो उनको रिजॉल्व कैसे किया जाना चाहिए सर हैज covered all the aspects even given the example of Springer statement तो आप लोगों को जो स्लाइड्स हम लोग शेयर करेंगे go through these slides and try to find out the answers which sir has already interacted with you so we will proceed to the next session. Thank you Anand sir.
Thank you.
Highly informative interactive session and clear out a lot of query and doubts in the mind of the researchers and participants.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you from
so
my
much.
side.
Thank you, ma'am.
So participants, we are going to move for the another session and we have our another resource speaker. Already she has joined. She is very punctual and highly disciplined also and having a lot of expertise in her field. So I would like to invite Mrs. Ritu, Assistant Professor, Department of Education, to introduce her. We are having Dr. Vidisha Datta from Calcutta. So, ma'am, Ritu ma'am, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
So please introduce Dr. Vidisha ma'am so that we can proceed on the session.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. One minute, ma'am.
Till then, ma'am is going to join and introduce our esteemed guest speaker. I will let you know the participants today's concept on which ma'am is going to highlight. that is intellectual honesty and research integrity. So Ritu ma'am, please proceed on and introduce our eminent guest speaker.
Okay, ma'am. Okay. Good morning to all. I, Ritu Gupta, welcome all of you. Today is the second technical session of 8th day of Refresher Course 2022, for which respected Dr. Vidisha Datta has been invited by our university. Presently, she is working as an assistant professor in Ashutosh College. Welcome, ma'am. On behalf of Department of Education of BMU Rohtak, dear scholars, first, I would like to talk about her profile. She has 16-year experience as faculty members at different level and has excellent research paper publication record. Ma'am qualified NET in commerce and she got scholarship for undergraduate examination. She has experience as an editor of college departmental journal. She is author also. Name of her book is Principles and Practice of Management and Business Communication. So now I would like to request Dr. Vidisha Datta to deliver her lecture on today's topic. Today's topic is intellectual honesty and research integrity. Welcome again, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks to the organizers. Firstly, to the organizers, Baba Misconduct University, for inviting me here as a speaker. This is Dr. Vidisha Datta, Assistant Professor, Ashutosh College, Department of BBA, affiliated to University of Calcutta. So without wasting much time, because I have 1.5 hours and lots to speak, I'll move into my topic. I'll just share my screen and I'll begin my topic. Okay, before that, I'd just like to ask the organizers, do I need to make the session bilingual? Would that be helpful for the participants if I mix Hindi and English, or is only English fine?
I have already WhatsApp you regarding this topic, this aspect. You can do bilingually because we have participants, most of research scholars.
Okay,
and
fine.
Participants all over the India also.
Okay, so I'll keep it bilingual then. Fine, I'll just share the screen. So kindly confirm, is my screen visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay. So our topic for today is intellectual.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So our topic for today is intellectual honesty and research integrity. Now, topic को शुरू करने से पहले, let's first understand why at all we need to know about this. Firstly, as you must be knowing that if you are going for your PhD work, अगर आप PhD कर रहे हो, so research and publication ethics has become a mandatory coursework, right? A mandatory subject to be completed in your coursework. और उसी में एक यूनिट आता है साइंटिफिक मिसकंडक्ट, और उस यूनिट के अंदर एक सब यूनिट आता है इंटेलेक्चुअल ऑनेस्टी एंड रिसर्च इंटीग्रिटी. तो उस वजह से भी हमको जानना है रिगार्डिंग दिस टॉपिक. बिसाइड्स दैट वी ऑल्सो नीड टू नो अबाउट इट, क्योंकि अगर हमको ये पता नहीं है विच एक्शंस क्लासिफाई एज इंटेलेक्चुअल डिसऑनेस्टी और नॉन इंटीग्रिटी, तो शायद हम खुद भी बिना जाने वो करते हैं ड्यूरिंग रिसर्च. काफी टाइम इट इज अनइंटेंडेड. पीपल डोंट नो दैट दिस एक्शन दैट आई एम डूइंग is an act of intellectual dishonesty as considered from research aspect. That is why also we need to know what exactly it means in research, and if somebody does it, then what is the consequence. दोनों ही हमको पता करना है. So before we move deep into it, a quote by Spencer Johnson, he says, integrity is telling myself the truth and honesty is telling the truth to other people. मतलब दो ही सच्चाई के बारे में ही बोल रहे हैं, but two aspects. जब मुझे खुद पता है कि सच्चाई क्या है and I am adhering to it, मैं वही करती हूँ, कोई मुझे देखे या ना देखे, whether any rule is imposed on me, not because of that reason, from very within I follow the rules of honesty, that is integrity. or what is honesty? A slight deflection from it. That is, मुझे खुद तो पता है, लेकिन जब मैं दूसरों को बोलती हूँ, when I'm saying it to others, there might be people who know the truth themselves, but when they are informing it to others or telling it to others, they are not telling it all correctly or all honestly. So that is, जब दूसरों के बोलने की वक्त भी you are maintaining the truthfulness, then that is honesty. So integrity is telling the truth to yourself, while honesty means when you are telling the truth to other people. And both are necessary when we are into research. Now, although my topic is intellectual honesty and research integrity, it is a subpart of scientific misconduct. Itna mujhe pata hai. Of course, you have covered scientific misconduct in the previous sessions, but since they are all overlapping, because intellectual dishonesty is a kind of scientific misconduct only. So, before we move into intellectual honesty, we will cover the concepts of scientific misconduct in very brief. We will also know about some cases of scientific misconduct. Cases जानने की क्या जरूरत है? To understand the consequence. There are many kinds of people. Some people will be integrated and honest from within. Some people might be honest only when they are under some pressure of law, right? क्या हो सकता है? If somebody does do some scientific misconduct, some act of intellectual dishonesty, what may happen? So we will know about some reported cases about it. Then we'll come to know what is intellectual honesty. We can assess from this session whether we are ourselves being intellectually honest or not. We will know about research integrity. And we will be also ensure research integrity in your own research if you follow the step that we are discussing. जो हम यहाँ पे discuss करने वाले हैं. So the flow of discussions will be like this. Firstly, we will do scientific misconduct, the meaning, form, and reason. Then we will move into intellectual honesty. उसके बाद हम research integrity में जाएंगे. As you can see, the slides have been kept a bit data heavy. इसका reason है कि अगर आप बाद में इनको use करना चाहते हो, I can share the slides if you want it later on. So they are data heavy that they can themselves be used as the notes. I'll just explain the layout of the PPT as well. On the left side, the topic that we will be currently doing, as you see, meaning is highlighted in yellow over here. So ये क्यों है? Because हमारा 1.5 घंटे का online session है. Attention span vary करता है. So often we get a bit distracted. So when your attention is back, you can immediately follow what topic is going on. On the left side, it will be highlighted, and the main slide will be in discussion. Sorry. So इसके साथ हम शुरू करते हैं the meaning of scientific misconduct. So how do you define misconduct? You know, there is no definition for darkness. Light, when light is not there, it is darkness. So darkness doesn't have a definition of its own. Similarly, what is misconduct? When somebody is not doing a good conduct, that means the person is into some kind of misconduct. Just as I explained, I just draw this analogy once more, that absence of light itself is darkness. So, because darkness can happen in many ways. गलती बहुत तरीके से किया जा सकता है. You can do a mistake in many ways, but right is always one route, right? So while doing some examples of scientific misconduct, also we will see there are so many different types. कितने तरीके से लोग चोरी करते हैं, मतलब चोरी ही हुआ है. In research, when you are doing an act of scientific misconduct, is equivalent to theft in real life. So scientific misconduct क्या है? It's basically the violation of the standard codes of scholarly conduct and ethical behavior in publication of professional scientific research. So हम ये जो misconduct के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं, it is in the context of scientific research. So जब भी आप PhD के लिए हो या recruitment के लिए हो, आप कोई publication कर रहे हो, कोई journal में कर रहे हो, कोई book में कर रहे हो, research जब paper लिख रहे हो, you need to be extremely cautious that every line you're writing, every work you're mentioning, every data you're collecting, every analysis you're doing, the way you're reporting, everything should follow the codes of scholarly conduct and ethical behavior. अब ये scholarly conduct क्या है? It actually encompasses many aspects, but mainly it means जो आप जिस field में भी हो, उसका जो highest level of professional standard होगा, that we come to know during your coursework, during your studies, you have to adhere to that. What are ethics? They are the moral principles that govern how researchers should carry out their work, right? Being honest in your methods, as I just said, how you're collecting the data, how you're analyzing it, how you are reporting it, you act with sincerity. मतलब जो भी काम है एकदम honestly. So क्या-क्या dishonesty हो सकता है? We are coming to that. But we need to first understand as honest as possible. That is the way of working, right? So we see a few definitions also I have mentioned on the slide. As a Danish definition of scientific misconduct is like the intention or gross negligence leading to fabrication of scientific message or a false credit or emphasis given to a scientist. If we closely read the definition, तो हमको यहाँ पे basically examples of misconduct दिखेगा. यहाँ पे ये बोला गया है कि जब कोई fabrication of data होता है या कोई false credit, मतलब लिखा नहीं है, somebody is not an author but is claiming the credit as an author, or you have fabricated the data, means you have created the data. These kinds of actions are done. That refers to scientific misconduct. Now, the consequence होता है scientific misconduct का, मतलब कर तो दिया, अब करने के बाद जो होता है, it has got huge and damaging impact on the journal audience or for any individual who is exposed to it. Right? जब scientific research के बारे में बात करते हैं, उसमें और भी ज़्यादा है, like in when doing examples, we'll go through those also. कोई अगर medicine बनता है on the basis of a wrong research, we can very well imagine the impact it can have on our health. So what are the various forms of scientific misconduct? वैसे तो बहुत तरीके का हो सकता है, but the three main ones that are categorized are fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism. So what is fabrication? Fabrication of data would mean completely making up the results and recording or reporting them. मतलब कुछ जो हुआ ही नहीं है, something which has not even happened. You just create it. Somebody just creates it and uses it for further analysis. But they are actually fake, completely fake. That is called fabrication. And it is a kind of misconduct. And this one is a hugely used one. Researchers often have the tendency of collecting some data and fabricating the rest so as to match sometimes the sample numbers. While we are discussing all this, it is very good on our parts to silently think behind our mind. Ever have we resorted to any of these activities? कभी अनजाने में भी क्या हमने ये किया है बिना जाने कि this comes under scientific misconduct? क्योंकि paper लिखना and has now become a necessity. We know that. Be it for recruitment, be it for your PhD submission, लिखना पड़ता है. We have to write, we have to publish. But it's very, I mean, so, and because of that pressure, initially I'm talking about pressure, then later we'll see it's always not because of the pressure also. But anyway, because of the pressure, people have a tendency of किसी भी तरह से paper लिखो और उसको छाप दो. In the process, people might fabricate data ki, so that the journal, the paper gets accepted in the journal where the researcher is intending it to be published. Right? So, ऐसा कुछ किया है? It's good time कि we introspect ourselves. Have we done this ever for the sake of a publication? So, fabrication means जब कोई data बनाता है, somebody makes up the data. What is falsification? Falsification means manipulating the research materials, equipment, or processes, or changing or omitting the data or results such that the research is not accurately represented in the research record. देखिए, हम जो भी method of scientific misconduct somebody if goes into a scientific misconduct, उसका outcome एक ही होगा, that your results are not trustworthy. And on those non-trustworthy results, some disastrous consequences can come up. Especially in the field of science. I mean, of course, in all fields, but the implications are often harsher on the fields of science. So, falsification मतलब क्या? जो data है उसको falsify कर दिया. मतलब एक आया था, I change it. I don't create it, I change it. Why? Often because maybe जो data मुझे मिला है original, उससे जो outcome आ रहा है, that doesn't match what I thought. The researcher often fails to understand that when in original research work, it's not necessary that wahi result aaye jo I have hypothesized or I had thought in my mind or I thought will be of great value addition. Often there's a tendency in researchers, जब वो लिखने बैठते हैं, they have a set idea कि this should be the outcome or this is good or this is going to be accepted. And when that kind of result does not come out, they think that this might lead to rejection of my paper. Reject ho sakta hai. तो मैं क्या? So a better way is some researchers might think कि data को इस तरह से manipulate कर दो कि result. We know we do it through all people do it through statistical softwares and statistics is all about numbers. तो अगर number को इधर उधर कर देंगे तो result भी आ जाएगा जैसा what the researcher intends to. तो वैसे manipulating the data या equipment और जो process है उसको change कर दिया. We don't somebody doesn't follow the process which he has or she has reported. या फिर data आया है कुछ data हटा दिया या फिर add कर दिया. So that is falsification of data, the second type. And the last one is plagiarism. Matlab appropriation of another person's ideas, processes, results or words without giving appropriate credit. इसका importance तो हमको पता ही है. और कुछ हो ना हो, see, fabrication, falsification is still little difficult to identify. But these days, with the help of the plagiarism softwares, we know very well that it's very easy to detect plagiarism. But kya hota na, in any field you will find, whenever somebody finds out a method to stop something bad, somebody else will again find out a method so that that also faces some difficulties. मतलब मैं क्या बोलना चाह रही हूँ? As you have this plagiarism check softwares, आपको पता है काफी सारे हैं, free resources है, paid resources है. कुछ नहीं तो सिंपल क्रोम में जाके एक सेक्शन को कॉपी कर देने से क्रोम भी निकाल देगा कि अगर देयर आर नंबर ऑफ वर्ड्स which have been copied one after another, right? ये किया जा सकता है बहुत आसानी से. And so more or less researchers are very conscious of this and they try to avoid plagiarism as much as possible. लेकिन then you again have softwares today which helps you paraphrasing. मतलब एक चोरी को रोकना चाहा तो कोई और आइडिया आ गया. मतलब what does those software do? Would help an unethical researcher. It would help an unethical researcher. Why am I telling this if this is unethical? Because so that everybody knows that this using this technique is also unethical. And if we are resorting to this and getting your journal and if we are getting our article published, इस तरह से अगर हम publication कर रहे हैं तो हम भी एक unethical practice का part हो गए. Who's going to watch? Many people might ask, who's going to watch? If somebody doesn't get caught and somebody has got a publication, many people might think, ठीक है, मेरा तो हो गया, मेरा तो एक journal में एक आ गया, so this will help me in my promotion or my recruitment or whatever जिस वजह से भी आप publication करो, मेरा तो काम हो गया. But I strongly believe, and I'm sure everybody believes, that someday or the other, and this is not related to your research necessarily, this is very fundamental in our life, any wrong done has to be paid sometime in some form or the other. So only because कि चलो ये तो कोई देखा नहीं कि तो मैंने plagiarism किया था, किसी को तो पता नहीं चला, तो और मेरा तो जर्नल भी आ गया. दिस इज नॉट अ रीजन कि कोई और भी जर्नल उस तरह से पब्लिकेशन करे. और उससे क्या होता है, अगेन वी आर हैविंग इन द अपकमिंग स्लाइड्स. So coming back to our point, कि क्या होता है, there are many softwares today that helps the researcher to paraphrase. क्या किया कि एक section किसी का copy, somebody plagiarized, took a section and then again put in another software which helps in paraphrasing. क्या किया, words को इतना इधर उधर कर दिया keeping the meaning intact, if the plagiarism software is unable to detect कि plagiarism हुआ है. So आप सोचिए कि anti-plagiarism software is a method to reduce scientific misconduct. But then you have another software which helps the researcher to paraphrase and stop the anti-plagiarism software from identifying the plagiarism. So ऐसा होता रहता है. There will be a section of people who will always try to take some method which is unethical. लेकिन हम ये course हम क्यों कर रहे हैं? Somebody who has joined the course definitely wants to know कि ethics क्या है, क्योंकि हमारा course का नाम ही तो ये है, publication ethics. So what is ethics? What are publication ethics? क्यों हमको follow करना चाहिए? And you understand it and you follow it. That is what the expectation is. Okay. So there are other forms of plagiarism also. I'm sorry.
Vidisha ma'am.
हाँ बताइए.
Vidisha ma'am, there is a software that is Quillbot.
Yeah.
You might have listened. It is used as a tool of paraphrasing.
Yeah.
So while the researchers are going to use it, do you consider it is ethical?
See, the purpose कोई इसको क्यों use कर रहा है? That is very important. Often I have noted even while reviewing papers that these kinds of softwares are being used so that the plagiarism softwares cannot detect the plagiarism done. Intention is बहुत important है. वो हम सामने के साइड में भी वही करेंगे. इस वजह से वो यूज किया जा रहा है. कोई अगर इस चीज को इसलिए यूज कर रहा है कि उसका इंग्लिश काफी स्ट्रांग नहीं है, उसने कुछ लिखा हुआ है, वो उसको पैराफ्रेज करके या फिर ग्रामरली में ग्रामर चेक करवा लिया, दैट्स अ डिफरेंट थिंग. लेकिन कोई अगर एक सेक्शन कॉपी करता है किसी से और फिर उसका पैराफ्रेज करवाता है so that it doesn't get caught, what's the answer? Is it ethical or unethical?
So are you agree that paraphrasing while using in a research paper, preparing a research
That's what
paper,
I said. That's what I said. What is the intention? ये बहुत जरूरी है. कोई एक सेक्शन कॉपी कर लिया, immediately it is plagiarism. अब plagiarism करने के मतलब वो काम उनका है ही नहीं, किसी और से कॉपी किया है, करके उसको पैराफ्रेज करके अपने रिसर्च में यूज किया है. तो ये तो चोरी का चीज यूज करने का दूसरा तरीका हो गया. तो in that case it is unethical. So it's very important कि उसका मकसद क्या है? What is the intention behind using it? As I said, there can be an honest intention also. किसी का maybe language के ऊपर उतना दखल नहीं है, उसने खुद के language में कुछ लिखा है, and he or she thinks कि इसका सजावट बहुत ज्यादा अच्छा नहीं है, so he or she paraphrases it, और फिर उसको grammarly type के software से check करवा लिया, then it is okay. So it is about the intention.
Yeah, I do agree with you, but my question was that has been asked by some students while doing paraphrasing, but keeping the sole essence of that statement given by a particular author and then properly quoting them, properly giving them credit, still it is considered to be a
नहीं. इस citation अगर citation दे दिया है तो फिर तो वो plagiarism ही नहीं हुआ, तो फिर तो paraphrasing में कोई problem नहीं है. The thing is again, yes, so if citation दिया हुआ है then it doesn't come under plagiarism itself. तो अगर plagiarism ही नहीं हुआ तो फिर what I'm telling you is while reviewing what has come to my notice, often कभी-कभी मैं ये देखती हूँ कि paraphrasing किया जा रहा है plagiarism को हटाने के लिए. That is wrong. कोई किसी को पूरा cite किया हुआ है, cite किया मतलब it is not plagiarism at all. After that, if it is paraphrased, then it doesn't matter. So it is about the way one is using it. It is not about the software, right? So it is about the way that it is being used. So next,
so hoping that participants you have get your answer, ma'am has cleared out your doubts. Paraphrasing itself is not a crime. It is
not at
helpful.
All.
It is helpful in building and developing up your vocab. If it is lacking in your language, linguistic part is weaker, but intentions are required to be honest.
The intention is very important. Anything anything that we have in our, anything that we have like nuclear energy can be used for various good purposes and it can also be used for destruction. So it all depends on the intention, how something is being used. So it is a good software if used correctly, but people use it very differently. So who will use it differently? जिनमें dishonesty होगा. इसीलिए we come back to the point again. Is the researcher intellectually honest or dishonest? अगर honest है, तो फिर he or she will not use it for any dishonest purpose. We'll use it as somebody maybe have asked, and therefore you put the question कि language के ऊपर दखल नहीं है, उसको paraphrase कर लिया, so quote कर दिया, cite कर दिया. So it is absolutely okay. You use it correctly. But as I said, while reviewing papers, come to my notice that this has been used at times, and it gets caught also, like if the review is done properly, ये सामने आ भी जाता है कि ये paraphrase किया हुआ है लेकिन इसका citation नहीं दिया हुआ है, right? इस मतलब plagiarism को हटाने के लिए use किया है. So वही मैं बोल रही थी. I hope it's clear. So लेकिन coming to this, क्यों? Why would people do acts of dishonesty and all? Because if you look into this evolution of academia, see, initially it was like, it was necessary to publish. Publication was important. Then came a time when it was like, publish or you perish. Like, job nahi milega, promotion nahi hoga, that kind of. Then gradually came a time where it was like, not only publish, but publish in very high impact journals. That way you have these impact factors mentioned on the journals. Or you perish. मतलब सिर्फ publication से काम नहीं होगा. We know very well that because of this publication pressure, कितना ज़्यादा, I mean, so many fake journals have come out. Joseph, they take money for the sake of publication. Money is often taken to make the publication open source also. But when money is taken so that the step of review can be omitted, और ज़्यादा review नहीं होता है, जो भी लिखा हुआ है वो publish कर दिया, then that is not good, of course. So ये fake और predatory journal का जन्म ही हुआ है because of this pressure that publish or perish. So when this came कि predatory journals आ गए कि उनमें publish करो, सब उनमें ही publish करने लग गए. So we know that very well. The care list, UGC came out with a care list because there was, when the initial concept was of publication in journals, having an ISSN number would have been sufficient. And what happened, there were so many journals which came out with did some international peer review, and they called themselves international peer review journals, and they had an ISSN number, and they took some amount from the researchers, और एकदम 1 या 2 महीने में publication हो रहा है, right? मतलब review काफी अच्छी तरह से नहीं हो रहा है, ऐसा बहुत ज्यादा हो रहा था. तभी क्या हुआ, UGC, I'm talking the Indian context, in the global context also there are many, I mean, Cope and Wame, the session that we will have on that surely will cover more on this. So Indian context में UGC care came out. उनमें भी आपको दिखेगा कि continually they are also removing journals, adding journals. Why? कोई था list में, but remove करना पड़ा. क्यों? Maybe their actions again have turned bit commercial. ऐसा आपको if you follow the list carefully, you keep on seeing कि ऐसे journals आ रहे जा रहे. So ये publish or perish जब था, so people, this predatory journals came up, people started publishing so much. So now came the new thing, publish in high impact journals, अच्छे journals, right? अब अच्छा journal अगर है, so उसमें time भी लगेगा. Like I can mention, like I have got one paper published in Technology Forecasting and Social Change. It is an ABCD A listed journal. It has got published in January 2022. वो paper review हुआ till 1.5 years. So if you want to publishing in high impact journals, and in अगर हम यहाँ पे social science, commerce और management का stream का people अगर है यहाँ पे, you know what Australian Business Dean Council means. ABDC journals are highly valued. तो उनमें अगर आपको लगता है कि publish करना है, और लगता है मतलब these days you will see they are only primarily valued in the area of social science, economics. They are valued very highly, Not only, I mean, forget A, even a C rank journal would be of high prestige if we have it on our CV. So क्योंकि उनका impact factor काफी ज्यादा होता है. So pressure क्या बढ़ गया अभी? Publish in high impact journals. क्योंकि सबको पता चल गया है कि सिर्फ पब्लिकेशन का काम नहीं होगा, बिकॉज प्लेटरी जर्नल्स आ गया है. अब अभी करेंटली जो हो रहा है, इट्स अ ह्यूज कंपटीशन. यू सी, इफ यू लुक अराउंड, आपको दिखेगा कि सिर्फ पब्लिकेशन नहीं है. कितना पब्लिकेशन आया एक साल में? पीपल आर वेरी कीन ऑन पब्लिशिंग एंड फ्रीक्वेंटली इन हाई इम्पैक्ट जर्नल्स, जिसमें काफी कंपटीशन है. I mean, it's quite difficult. These high impact journals are very difficult to publish with, because your paper really has to be good. I mean, has to be flawless. As I told you, my paper was in review for 1.5 years. I had written the paper. I think I and my co-author, we took about 1.5 years to complete the paper. Uske baad wo paper review hua till 1.5 years, and after that it gets published. So if for an A, maybe for a C rank journal, it will not be 1.5 years. तो भी आपको दिखेगा कि 10-11 महीने तो लग ही जाता है. So इतना टाइम काफी लोगों को देना पसंद नहीं होता है. जब पसंद नहीं होता है, तब क्या करते हैं? नहीं, मेरा तो नंबर्स ही नहीं बढ़ेगा, ज्यादा जर्नल नहीं होगा, तो क्यों ना हम कुछ ऐसा करें कि जर्नल जल्दी से पब्लिश हो जाए. This thought comes in, but you know what happens is, इससे एकेडेमिया का प्योरिटी खराब होता है. क्या होता है? Academia is based on research. New knowledge comes through research. But if this pressure of publication tends to, somebody is annotating on the screen. If इसका अगर pressure बढ़ता है, so क्या होता है? Academia का quality खराब होता है. So the chart that I just showed is a popular belief कि publication or publish or perish. इस एटीट्यूड की वजह से पीपल आर रिजॉर्टिंग टू डिसऑनेस्टी. गलत काम कर रहे हैं, यू नो. बट इज इट ट्रू? सिर्फ प्रेशर की वजह से ही हो रहा है, या कुछ देर पहले जब मैं बोल रही थी इसमें कोई लालसा? इज देयर सम ग्रीड आल्सो? ग्रीड, if it is pressure, then somebody will keep a limit to the number of dishonest. We'll go to some cases where we'll see कि 70-75-100 plagiarized papers, fabricated papers, कोई सिर्फ प्रेशर की वजह से थोड़ी निकलता है. ग्रीड. कोई भी चोरी किया होता है, जब पकड़ा नहीं जाता तो चोर को बहुत हौसला आ जाता है कि it can be done again, and it converts into a greed. So often what happens, there are personal motives where priority of findings is mentioned as the most important one. The author is needs some early publication. So verify नहीं करता है result, जल्दी जल्दी दे देता है, क्योंकि मुझे number of journals, author क्या कहते हैं, researcher को number of journals बढ़ाना है. और एक, again, इसका भी मैंने mention पहले किया था, aversion to negative results. Often researchers have this misconception कि अगर negative result आया है, I mean, वो नहीं आना चाहिए. Negative result is also a result. This also helps to refute an idea. An idea came, but the result says that this idea is not takeable. That is also a result, right? Which can also be published, but people think maybe that will get rejected. So refutation of hypothesis is not a failure. So researchers need to understand the entire process is the research. क्या होता है? What we usually see is what gets more attraction or what gets more highlight is जब कोई positive result आता है कि ये invent हुआ है, ये कोई formation, we see that, that's true. But again, हमको तो पता है ना, ये the famous example जब Thomas Alva Edison with the bulb invent किया, तो bulb invent करने से पहले he had 100 different ways in which he could not invent the bulb. So every way he could not invent the bulb was also a research result कि इस तरीके से नहीं होगा, इसका मतलब कोई और तरीका है. So refutation of hypothesis is not a failure. Researchers need to understand this. तो hypothesis को जबरदस्ती सही करने के पीछे नहीं लग जाएंगे. कभी कभी क्या होता है, ये रिसर्चर्स के लिए काफी financial grant मिलता है. So वो grant पाने के लिए भी researchers tend to do intellectual dishonesty, acts of intellectual dishonesty. But again, researchers need to remember what I was saying a bit earlier, that life yields to them who yield to themselves. अगर हम खुद खुद के अंदर से, खुद के तरफ से, towards yourself, if you're intellectually honest, life is definitely going to pay you for that. Maybe a publication doesn't happen. It's possible. You are very honest. Your results did not attract the editorial board, but your honesty will attract good to you in life. This belief also needs to be there. That dishonesty से, ये तो हम एकदम, जब हम एकदम नर्सरी में थे तभी से हमको पता है कि dishonesty से जो मिलता है वो रहता भी नहीं है, और उसका लिए punishment भी is in some form or the other, life is definitely going to give you. And honesty is always the best policy. So with this belief, we need to understand what is intellectual honesty and research integrity, because even for the question that I answered, the concept remains same. Intellectual honesty, research integrity is all about your intention. हमारा intention है क्या honest होने का? That is very important. या हमारा intention है publication बढ़ाने का? Because we are doing everything we are learning over here is for publications only. Albert Einstein said that there is nothing divine about morality. It is a human affair. मतलब आज के जमाने में क्या हो गया है? We see so much dishonesty around us कि कोई honest आदमी बहुत ज्यादा honest दिख जाता है तो भी हम ये सोचते हैं ये तो एकदम भगवान की तरह है, कितना honest है, कितना ज्यादा अच्छा है. But actually the truth is, honesty is normal. Being dishonest is actually abnormal. But with this acquired restlessness, impatience, competition of wrong sorts, क्या हो गया अभी कि people think that dishonesty is normal. एक honest आदमी दिख जाए, एक दो तीन, तो लगता है अच्छा इतना अच्छा आदमी भी होता है, but it is not true. If you see a small kid, एक 2 साल का जो world से कुछ सीखा नहीं है, who has not acquired anything from the world, is definitely going to be honest. जैसे जैसे वो बच्चा बड़ा होता है, it acquires the wrong things from the world, और फिर वो gradually dishonest में convert कर सकता है, और कोई नहीं करता है. That depends on how the person upbringing has been. But the thing is, we need to understand that it is a moral duty to be honest. That is only normal. Right? So intellectual honesty is something that should be from within. And also, if that is for a hope of some reward or fear of some punishment, then that is also not a true form of honesty or integrity. जैसे आप हेलमेट पहनते हो या सीट बेल्ट बांधते हो, जब अगर ऐसा कोई है, जब सामने ट्रैफिक पुलिस है या आप सिग्नल के सामने हो, then that is not being integrated actually. वो है क्योंकि अगर हम पकड़ा जाए तो अभी तो 1000 rupees का फाइन है for driving for a 4-wheeler. So उस वजह से पहना है, not because I understand the traffic rule, a seat belt has to be worn. So in both cases, maybe in one car somebody sitting, in both cars 2 people are sitting with the seat belt worn. One is sitting because सामने ट्रैफिक सिग्नल है, दूसरा घर से ही पहन के निकला है, तो बाहर से देखने में एक ही लगेगा, बाहर से देखने में दोनों को ही ड्यूटीफुल ही लगेगा. But one person is integrated, other person is not. So that is, again, I come back to the question asked a little while ago. Intention. Intention क्या है? That defines your honesty and integrity. So intellectual honesty is the honesty in acquisition, analysis, in case of research, analysis and transmission of ideas. जहां से हम data लेते हैं, जैसे हम analyze करते हैं, जहां पे हम ideas report करते हैं, transmit करते हैं. In all places, whatever truth is known by the researcher states it just that way. अगर कोई researcher, because of lack of understanding, lack of knowledge, or unintentional collection of wrong data, इन वजह से उसका results गलत आता है, then that is a mistake. That is not dishonesty. But then the first two which I say, this is very fine line. The first पहले जो मैंने बोला कि lack of understanding, then the thing is lack of understanding नहीं होना चाहिए. इसीलिए तो वो RPE का research publication, इसका coursework भी क्या बोले आपको, मतलब कंपल्सरी किया है कि लैक ऑफ अंडरस्टैंडिंग लेके रिसर्च नहीं करना चाहिए. स्पेंड इनफ टाइम टू हैव अ क्लियर अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑन योर सब्जेक्ट. लेकिन सब करने के बाद भी अगर कोई अनइंटेंडेड गलती हो जाए, इंटेंशन नहीं था, और उसके वजह से मेरा रिजल्ट गलत आए, तो वो इंटेलेक्चुअल डिसऑनेस्टी में नहीं आता है. बट यू सी, दिस इज सो ग्रे. ये समझना, अगर किसी का कोई गलती सामने आए, ये समझने के लिए भी दिस इज सो सब्जेक्टिव ऑल्सो, कि इसमें इंटेंशन था या अनइंटेंशनल था. दिस ऑल्सो इज वेरी सब्जेक्टिव. It depends on the person who is judging you. But we are not here to judge. We are here to know कि हमको क्या करना है. So we need to know our subject very well, so that unintended errors नहीं हो regarding the knowledge of my subject. I don't have the knowledge, इसलिए मैंने गलती कर नहीं होना चाहिए. You need to be intellectually, when you are collecting the data, you should be as sure as possible as to where you are collecting it from, what you are collecting. You should spend time on that to ensure that the source of data is correct, the method of collection is correct. Right. So, उसके बाद भी अगर कुछ होता है, then yes, it is unintentional. But अगर बहुत ज़्यादा, I mean, if the mistake is too big, and the researcher says it's unintentional, it's difficult to prove because it will culminate to dishonesty only. So intellectual honesty pertains to any communication intended to perform or persuade. Now this would be in anything, मतलब not necessarily publication के बारे में हम बोल रहे हैं यहाँ पे. कोई भी announcement, कोई भी speech, कोई भी lecture, कोई भी instruction, कोई भी presentation, like I am presenting over here. Not everything that I have written over here is directly from my mind. I have used some resources. Again, all of them are listed at the end of my presentation, because from wherever I have taken some material to get the information more structured, I have mentioned all of them in the end of my presentation. So, because ये intellectual honesty का बात सिर्फ research paper के बारे में ही नहीं आता है. Anywhere you are informing a larger audience through some methods, so announcements, speeches, lectures, instruction, presentation, publications, of course, because we are doing in case of publications, declarations, news release, reports, religious instructions, social media posts as well, journalism. And not only about prose and speech, जो text है, जो speech है, सिर्फ उसी के बारे, उसी में intellectually honest नहीं होना है. जो ग्राफ है, हमको पता है ना कितना मॉर्फ फोटोग्राफ सोशल मीडिया में दिखता है. Those are all examples of intellectual dishonesty. Photographs, graphs, other measure of expression, जो भी we are using to tell somebody else about some fact that we know or we have analyzed, we have to be extremely honest in collecting them and analyzing them and reporting them as well. So this is an applied method of problem solving which is characterized by an unbiased, honest attitude and which can be demonstrated in a number of different ways, right? So, कुछ ways यहाँ पे लिखा है, but it's not restricted to that. First, how do you ensure that you're intellectually honest? That's what you're trying to say. First is कि मेरा जो personal belief है, that should not interfere with the pursuit of truth. तो research में आ रहा है, वो आ रहा है. मुझे क्या लग रहा है, I'm not going to think of that at that point of time. I'll not let my belief interfere with the flow of my research. ये सब हम discuss किए हैं पहले. This is just in a nutshell. Next is relevant facts and information are not omitted, even when such things contradict one's hypothesis. अगर hypothesis contradict भी होता है, तो फिर भी कोई fact को हटा दिया कि hypothesis contradict ना हो, ऐसा नहीं करना चाहिए. Whatever facts are presented should be in unbiased manner, and they should not be twisted in any form, leading to any misleading information. Next is that references of earlier work are acknowledged wherever possible. दूसरों का ही नहीं, खुद का भी. मतलब, if we are, as I said, I'm sure plagiarism has been covered in another session. So just brief, like when you are copying others' work without citing is plagiarism, and we are quoting your own work without citing, and you pose as a fresh work, that's also plagiarism. That's just called self-plagiarism. So even if you're quoting your own work then also that has to be mentioned. That should not be posed as a new idea again. So इसके काम किया है, फिर उसको refer कर रहे हो तो mention your own work. And falsification, fabrication, and plagiarism should be completely avoided. This is most important when we want to be intellectually honest. जैसे मैं बोल रही थी, तो क्या होगा अगर कुछ मिसकंडक्ट कर दिया तो? अगर कर दिया और पकड़े नहीं गए तो फॉर द टाइम भी कुछ नहीं होगा. लेटर क्या होगा nobody knows. Life pays everybody back in various ways. But जब somebody gets caught, it's disastrous. Lots of bad name, lots of fame, sometimes even retraction of the degrees that a person holds, retraction of papers तो होता ही है. जो पेपर लिखे उसको हटा दिया वो तो होता ही है. That's the first thing. But this gets reported. We'll just go through a few examples world over. So it's not any region specific कि इस जगह पे ज्यादा होता है, इस देश में ज्यादा होता है, नहीं. हर देश में, क्योंकि the idea is human beings are same ना, in whichever country की जिसके भी बारे में बात कर लो, and they are often driven by greed. तो उसी को हटाना ही तो इंसान का काम है कि greed आएगा, लेकिन we don't need to succumb to it. There will be opportunities जहाँ पे कुछ, as I said, it's again a very good time. अगर हम publication किए हैं पहले, silently अपने मन में सोचे कि कहीं पे क्या किसी और का काम को अपना आइडिया बताया है, कहीं पे क्या कोई डेटा को ऐसे बढ़ाया है, कम किया है, शायद पता नहीं था कि it comes under misconduct. So we can be careful from next time onwards. As we see a number of examples over here, Bharat Agarwal, distinguished professor of cancer research, उसको resign करना पड़ा था अपना position से after the fraud was discovered. 65 papers में वो उन्होंने काम किया था कि curcumin, treatment of cancer कैसे use होता है, और it was a ray of hope also क्योंकि उनका काफी अच्छा results आ रहा था, मतलब research का results. लेकिन फिर on further investigation देखा गया कि he had fabricated data, he had falsified data, कुछ images दिया जो crop था, distorted था, rotated था दिखाने के लिए various stages of experiment, but वो कुछ हुआ ही नहीं था. एक ही पिक्चर को various मतलब वो पकड़ा नहीं गया. While review it didn't get caught. ज्यादातर समय ये सामने फिर कैसे आता है, जो पब्लिश हो गया 65 पेपर्स, एक दो तो नहीं, 65 पेपर्स, और सभी के बारे में ये मैं बोल रही हूँ, इसी के बारे में नहीं. क्या होता है, often fellow researchers, other people who are doing research in the same area, most of the times they are only the ringers of the bell. उनको ही फर्स्ट ये डाउट आता है कि ये इतना सारा पेपर आ रहा है, इतना जल्दी आ रहा है, रिजल्ट्स में तो दे स्टार्ट रीडिंग द पेपर. तो जब किसी में कुछ गलती होगा, अच्छे से डीप, somebody who wants to find out the mistake may be able to find out. तो इन्वेस्टिगेशन का अपील करता है, and then investigation happens, and ज्यादातर समय देखा गया है कि फेलो रिसर्चर्स, अगर कोई यूनिवर्सिटी हो तो स्टूडेंट्स, इनको ही आगे से पता चलता है कि समथिंग इज गोइंग रॉन्ग. और जब बहुत ज्यादा पॉजिटिव रिजल्ट आना शुरू करता है, या फिर एक ही टाइप के एक्सपेरिमेंट में किसी एक रिसर्चर का बहुत अलग तरीके का रिजल्ट आ रहा है और बाकियों का अलग आ रहा है, देन डाउट्स क्रॉप अप. यूजुअली इसी तरह से मैक्सिमम रिसर्चर्स जो रिपोर्टेड है इसी तरह से सामने है. यहाँ पे मैंने जो कुछ एग्जांपल दिया है वो काफी कम है, इससे बहुत ज्यादा एग्जांपल है. Elias Alzapti, he was also a medical practitioner. He posed as a biomedical researcher. His work was also a breakthrough in cancer papers. और वो क्या किए थे कि साइंस के पेपर में we have often seen, if you note clearly, there are a number of authors working on one project. तो what he did is firstly he plagiarized about 60 papers. और क्योंकि वो सब plagiarism था, उसका खुद का काम था, बस plagiarize करके वो कर रहे थे, और he wanted to show that it is a work of many people, so he referred to co-authors who were simply non-existent. आप सोच सकते हो कैसे मतलब people can think in so many ways. Non-existent co-authors, मतलब co-author जो है ही नहीं, उनका नाम लिखा, उनका existence बना के उनका नाम लिखा देना पड़ता है हमको author co-author के लिए, एक नाम, एक email ID, एक affiliation. If अब ये रिव्यू प्रोसेस में क्यों नहीं पकड़ा गया, सो अभी तो रिव्यू प्रोसेसेस भी बहुत ज्यादा स्ट्रिंजेंट है, इस वजह से पहले की तरह नहीं है, लेकिन फिर भी there are so many loopholes. So with non-existent co-authors, he plagiarized as many as 60 papers in the field of cancer research. Werner Bezvoda, he is from South Africa. उनका भी वही है. This was also on breast cancer only. So I have taken up some examples from science only. His work was initially, then I have taken some social science also. Because science में क्या होता है, as I just said, when somebody's work is being taken as a ray of hope, और फिर पता चले कि कौन ray of hope, the cancer patients who are struggling, उनको लग रहा है कि इनका रिसर्च से कोई कुछ होगा, they see a ray of hope, और फिर पता चलता है कि इनका जो रिजल्ट्स है वो सही है ही नहीं, उनको वो रिजल्ट मिला ही नहीं था, तो उनका कितना, how much demotivated and demoralized that patients would become. So ये जो unethical misconducts है, ये जो unethical activities है, the results are not limited to only these punishments which the researcher has got. It has got wide scale impact on the society at large. तो उनका भी क्या हुआ था, रिसर्च रिजल्ट बहुत ज्यादा अलग आ रहा था from other fellow researchers. So they were skeptical, they initiated an investigation, and they saw that the results were very different from what he was reporting. John Darcy, very famous case, he was a cardiologist formerly based in Harvard University. 100 Astraz book chapters, सभी में fabricated data, बना के publish किया. सिर्फ वही नहीं, fabricated data के बल पे फंडिंग भी लिया from National Institute of Health, फंडिंग भी लिया, and फिर it came to light after investigation, और उनको रिसर्च ग्रांट भी लौटाना पड़ा था क्योंकि वो फंडिंग भी ले लिया on the basis of fabricated data. So think कि अगर केयरफुली कोई फ्रॉड करता है तो काफी बड़ा फ्रॉड किया जा सकता है. अब पकड़े जाने पे कितना, John Darcy's case is a very famous case, सभी को पता है इसके बारे में क्योंकि ये बहुत ज्यादा फेमस हो गया, उसको रिसर्च ग्रांट भी वापस करना पड़ा. योशिताका फुजिया, a Japanese researcher, इतना फैब्रिकेशन किया in 183 scientific papers, इतना फैब्रिकेशन किया कि after the investigation report came out, the report said, मतलब ऐसा लग रहा था वो पेपर्स देख के after investigation came out कि कोई बैठ के नॉवल लिख रहा है. नॉवल लिखते हैं ना राइटर्स, पूरा इमेजिनरी, मतलब कोई सच्चाई नहीं, पूरा ही फैब्रिकेटेड. इस तरह से फैब्रिकेशन किया कि लग रहा है कि कोई नॉवल लिखा हुआ है. एक दो 183 पेपर्स. तो सिर्फ प्रेशर की वजह से कोई इतना ज्यादा चोरी कर सकता है क्या? इज बाउंड टू बी ग्रीड. Claudio Aroldi of Brazil, he was also reported for the biggest case of scientific fraud in Brazil. Elsevier में publication हुआ था, and they announced that 11 of his papers would be retracted, right? And he was also suspended. A suspension, retraction of PhD degree, ये काफी होता है after these come to light. 1993, Ohio State University में Leo Packwick, another professor, had plagiarized section from an unfunded NIH grant application. मतलब वो reviewer थे, so सिर्फ researcher के औहदे से, मतलब only as an author people don't plagiarize. See, he was a reviewer. NIH के grant के लिए proposals आते हैं, तो उन्होंने क्या किया, he was a reviewer. उस project को funding नहीं मिला, लेकिन वो उस proposal से idea copy कर लिए. Shall I continue?
Yes, ma'am. Till 1:30.
Yeah. I just heard something about recording. That's why I just said a recording stopped or started. Something was just mentioned. So I thought, is there any glitch from it? Okay, I'll continue. Right.
Yes, I do. Right.
Yeah.
This might be in technical.
Okay, fine. So what we are saying is, हाँ, तो क्या बोल रहे हैं यहाँ पे? Yeah. So he was a reviewer there. और वहां से आइडिया कॉपी कर लिया जो किसी और का प्रपोजल था, और फिर वो टेक्स्ट को अपने वो खुद भी, he wanted also a funded research from NIS, as a proposer उसको दे दिया. So as a reviewer ये कितना अनएथिकल प्रैक्टिस है, किसी और का वर्क, क्योंकि उन्होंने तो वहां पे रिव्यू के लिए भेजा था, उसी से वर्क लेके दे दिया एज अ फॉर ग्रांट एप्लीकेशन, पकड़ा गया, एंड ही वाज आल्सो डिबार्ड. तो पकड़े जाने पे तो द disastrous consequence, as I said. Daniel Marcio, a mathematician and computer scientist, he was banned from publishing in several journals due to publication. Word to word copy किया था एक और paper से, written by some other author. Francis Stone, he was an Irish philosopher, so our subject has changed now. He also plagiarized in more than 40 publications. In 2010, the first reports of plagiarism were made public by several scholars. जैसे मैं थोड़ी देर पहले बोली कि fellow scholars को ही पहले शक होता है, and they initiate some kind of investigation. And then basically what happened is he was also penalized for the same. Teruji Cho, he was a researcher of plasma physics. He was dismissed from the University of Tsukuba when his falsification of raw data was found. वहां पे भी उनका students, he was a researcher, he was a teacher also, उनका students को ही doubt हुआ था कि falsification हो रहा है. So people who work closely often understand these issues are happening. Now this official, Supachai Lorlo Wakarn, an official at Thailand's National Innovation Agency, he had plagiarized 80% of his PhD thesis. अपना PhD thesis का ही 80% plagiarized है, उसका PhD डिग्री भी छीन लिया गया. तो जो डिग्री उसको अवॉर्डेड हुआ था वो वापस ले लिया गया. Bruno Frey, he was an economist. Multiple acts of self plagiarism, right? मतलब क्या किया? खुद ही का काम है. So only plagiarism, not only plagiarism, self plagiarism is also deplorable. He copied his own work, but if you present your own work again and again as a fresh work, without citing you have done it previously, it seems it's your new effort. So that's also, so अगर खुद का भी काम cite कर रहे हो तो cite it. Don't, I mean, we should not pose as if it's a fresh work done again. Often people have the understanding that खुद का काम लेना तो ठीक है, तो मेरा ही है. You have to mention that it has been in a published work. If your previous work has been published, publication नहीं हुआ तो नहीं. If you are published, of course, that has to be mentioned. Diederik Stapel of Netherlands, उनका एक अनोखा ही तरीका था. वो एक खुद का falsified data set ready रखते थे, and then he would contact a colleague and said that he has got a data set जिसके ऊपर analysis नहीं हुआ है. So he would make the analysis. The data set was falsified. He made it. And he said that he had collected it honestly. He would ask a colleague to work on the data set and include him as a co-author. पहले ही बोला था कि asking for this kind of favor where you ask for authorship without contributing is also an act of scientific misconduct. So इस तरीके से he used to publish papers co-author के हिसाब से, लेकिन जो data sets थे वो सब falsified थे. So these were some examples. These were some examples of conduct. You saw the consequences were grave. So either we need to be honest from within, or we need to understand if this gets caught, this brings you lots of defamation. अब जो मैं पहले बोल रही थी, अगर कोई intention नहीं है तो फिर वो dishonesty नहीं है, वो गलती है. So this chart, this source has also been quoted. This chart I have not prepared. I have taken it from a paper which has been quoted at the end of the presentation. Three kinds of, I mean, the chart I have prepared, but the entire content has been, this transition has been taken, which I have mentioned at the end of the paper, end of the presentation. Three types: unintended, gray zone, and intended. मतलब unintended मतलब कोई common error हो गया, डिजाइनिंग में गलती हो गया, परफॉर्मेंस जो जब आप मतलब एक्शंस जो एक्सपेरिमेंट कर रहे हो उसमें गलती हो गया, मेथड ऑफ एनालिसिस में हो गया, या पब्लिकेशन के वक्त कोई अनइंटेंडेड एरर हो गया, मे बी यू अननोटिस्ड एरर्स, मे बी टाइपोग्राफिकल, मे बी व्हाइल इनपुटिंग द डेटा, दीज आर अनइंटेंडेड एरर्स। ये हटाया जा सकता है क्योंकि इसमें तो इंटेंशन नहीं है। दिस द रिसर्चर कैन रिमूव। कैसे? बाय बीइंग मोर केयरफुल, बाय लर्निंग मोर बिफोर डूइंग द एनालिसिस। काफी सीख के फिर एनालिसिस किया, 3-4 टेस्ट आता है। अब जैसे भी करके मैं काम, रिसर्चर्स माइट थिंक दिस वे कि ये सॉफ्टवेयर मैंने हाल ही में सीखा है, इसमें ये 2 टेस्ट आई एम बीइंग एबल टू डू प्रिटी वेल। अभी एक डेटा सेट को पकड़ो और जबरदस्ती इसको किसी टेस्ट में डाल दो और उसका जो रिजल्ट आता है आप पब्लिश कर दो। It has become a very common practice. Again, I note this while रिव्यू के वक्त दिस कम्स टू साइड। ऐसा लगता है कि डेटा सेट को जबरदस्ती इस टेस्ट में बिठाया गया है। अब इसमें क्या अनएथिकल है? डेटा सेट, मैं ये नहीं बोल रही कि डेटा सेट रॉन्ग है। व्हाट आई एम सेइंग इज मे बी दिस डेटा डज नॉट नीड टू बी एनालाइज दिस वे। तो ये सही तरीके से डिसऑनेस्टी नहीं हुआ, डेटा सेट भी सही है, सॉफ्टवेयर भी सही है, लेकिन इस डेटा सेट का ये एनालिसिस का तरीका बेटर हो सकता था, या इतना उतना सही नहीं है। ये क्यों हुआ है? बिकॉज द पर्सन डिड नॉट स्पेंड मोर टाइम इन लर्निंग अदर टेक्निक्स। ये उतना इंटेंशनल नहीं है, इसको आसानी से हटाया जा सकता है विद सम अमाउंट ऑफ सेल्फ स्टडी, क्योंकि इसमें मैनिपुलेशन, फॉल्सिफिकेशन नहीं है। तो सम आर अनइंटेंडेड एरर्स, सम आर ग्रे जोन, मतलब इंटेंडेड भी नहीं बोल सकते हैं, फिर अनइंटेंडेड भी नहीं बोल सकते। मतलब थोड़ा सा डेटा को मैनिपुलेट कर दिया, डेटा ओरिजिनली कलेक्ट किया था, सम सेक्शन मैनिपुलेट कर दिया। और while selecting the data you have been very selective. I didn't do a complete selection. Somebody doesn't do a complete selection. क्या किया? Selective selection किया ताकि आंसर्स ऐसे आए that my hypothesis gets confirmed. तो ऐसा नहीं कि falsified है, बट ये हल्का सा मैनिपुलेशन तो हुआ ही, क्योंकि डेटा मैं अपने मनपसंद का लिया। Next is undeserved authorship, where somebody doesn't deserve authorship, has not done it, but adds his or her name by returning a favor. Maybe कोई A has written a paper and B को co-author ले लिया, तो B जब लिखा A को co-author ले लिया, मतलब undeserved authorship. Often this is done to return some favor. Not only कोई और भी favor हो सकता है, somebody has done, maybe A has got help B in getting a job in his own university or college, and by referring also and says आप जब पेपर लिखो मुझे को ऑथर रख लेना। See, people move into so many different kinds of arrangements. किस के ऊपर नजर रखा जा सकता है, what किसके ऊपर रखा जा सकता है, इस खुद के ऊपर, ऐसा कुछ नहीं करे, which comes under any kind of manipulation. Next is multiple publications. एक ही तरह का टॉपिक, एक ही तरह का टॉपिक के ऊपर बार बार पब्लिकेशन किया। मतलब एक ही तरह का टॉपिक है, एक का डेटा सेट है फ्रॉम ईयर 1 to 3, दूसरे का डेटा सेट है फ्रॉम 4 to 6। एक ही तरह का, मतलब काम कुछ अलग है, प्रोसेस भी सेम है, डेटा सेट का सिर्फ टाइम बदल रहा है। यू कैन से दैट कोई चोरी किया है, यू कैन से डेटा सेट भी सही है, टेक्निक भी सही है, लेकिन एक ही काम बार बार क्यों करना है? प्रोसेस तो पता चल गया। नेक्स्ट इज सैलमी पब्लिकेशंस, जिसमें क्या होता है कि एक पेपर लिखा है अब उसी का ही, मतलब से again and again, when we are discussing various kinds of errors, it's a good time, again as I said, to silently think, have we ever done anything of this kind? If yes, next time so we don't do. क्योंकि हमें ऑफन हमको ये पता ही नहीं होता है कि अनएथिकल है। शायद किसी को लग सकता है कि अरे ये तो एक अच्छा मैटर है, मैंने तो एक अच्छा सा बड़ा सा पेपर लिखा है, 5 कंट्री के ऊपर काम किया है। हाँ, तो एक काम करते हैं ना, इसी का छोटे छोटे स्लाइस निकाल के 3-3 पेपर निकाल देते हैं, 2 कंट्री 2 कंट्री 1 कंट्री। बिकॉज आप जब पेपर लिखते हो कोई बैंडिंग होता नहीं है कि कितने कंट्री के ऊपर काम किया है। So why don't I do? I salami slice it and make 3 publications out of it. एक ही तरह का काम है, लेकिन I make salami publications. ये हो गया ग्रे जोन, मतलब डायरेक्टली चोरी भी नहीं बोल सकते, फुल्ली ऑनेस्ट भी नहीं बोल सकते. इस जोन के अंदर काफी सारे रिसर्चर्स आ जाते हैं और इनका ग्रे जोन वाला थिंग्स मतलब पकड़ना भी बहुत मुश्किल होता है ऑफन. एंड अगर पकड़ा भी गया तो ये डायरेक्टली इंटेलेक्चुअल डिसऑनेस्टी के अंदर नहीं आता है. सबसे the most dangerous ones are the intended ones, wherein ये fabrication, full falsification and plagiarism, किसी और का काम अपने नाम पे कर लेना is grievous offense. अभी इंटरनेट में इतना वर्क अवेलेबल है, so many work. You go to the so many places where these are open up because of this open access is available, that researchers might have a tendency दूसरे का काम अपना किसको पता चलेगा, ऐसा ही लगता है किसको पता चलेगा, कौन जाके सर्च करेगा, क्या हर रिव्यूअर सर्च करेगा. These are disastrous ones. Plagiarism is the biggest form of dishonesty. So यहाँ पे in the next 3 slides actually basically जो what I explained to the first slide, that only has been put in words, that the common mistakes are which are usually derived in the process of method में कोई गलती हो गया, design में hypothesis सही से frame नहीं हुआ, research plan was inadequate, और थोड़ा अच्छा plan करना चाहिए था. The samples are not very representative. They could have been more wider. Maybe the techniques are inadequate. The techniques could have been better. So these are various kinds of unintended methods. The most frequent forms of common errors encountered in practice are related to writing numbers and their disagreement. These are again also common error. कि typing mistake हो गया, the reference listings, right? So these are all unintended, as we just discussed a while back. Gray zone, as I said, is a place between intellectual, fully being intellectually dishonest and between common errors. So मतलब पता है कि ये पूरा सही नहीं है, जान के भी थोड़ा इधर उधर कर देना is basically what comes under gray zone. Okay. And here we have, in the previous slide, we have defined all salami publications and all, which I just said. So I'm not waiting on the slide much because I'm in 22 and move till 35. Okay. Next is the intended ones. The worst form है plagiarisms, fabrication or. So what are the signs that you are being intellectually honest? हम क्या कर सकते हैं? अगर आप सच्ची में intellectually honest हो, so what sign should be inside you? Or somebody, if you see another researcher's work and that person is showing these signs, then we can understand that that person is being intellectually honest. How? First is, do not overstay the power of your argument. If you're writing something, there of course has to be a conviction because I have published it. But if somebody is being honest, the person is definitely not going to be arrogant. Means if there is a criticism, if there is a challenge, that will also be handled with humility and not with arrogance, if the person is honest. लेकिन ऐसे हम बोलते हैं ना, मतलब I don't know what's there in Hindi. Because I'm from Bengal, a Bengali proverb is coming in my mind. But उसका मतलब the meaning of that quotation is, the thief has a higher voice. जो चोरी करता है उसका आवाज ज्यादा निकलता है. So अगर ज्यादा निकल रहा है मतलब you're not being humble, मतलब आपको छुपाने की कोशिश कर रहे हो. So being humble, listening to others' point. If there are alternative viewpoints, ये होता है अगर it's a good, अभी तो इतना अगर if one is publishing in a C, D grade journals, maybe these kinds of these things don't come up. But if one is publishing in a very noticed and a very famous and a very what do you call it, journal which is under the scanner, वहां पे अगर आपका पेपर आता है तो आपके मेल बॉक्स में काउंटर क्वेश्चंस भी आएगा. Somebody might ask you something, somebody might give an alternative viewpoint. So उनको भी equally valid और powerful सोचना चाहिए. मतलब ऐसा नहीं है कि if I have done a work which has been published by a very reputed journal, and I know that I have done it honestly, इसका मतलब ये नहीं होना चाहिए कि I will not be able to acknowledge other alternative viewpoints, because if how much ever good work you have done, alternative viewpoints exist kar hi sakta hai. So again, I'm coming back to humility only. Also, if somebody questions the researchers' assumptions and biases, that has to be publicly acknowledged. मतलब जो भी है publicly acknowledge करने का हिम्मत होना चाहिए. अगर publication के बाद ऐसा नहीं होता है क्या, publication के बाद लगा अरे ये तो थोड़ा गलत ही हो गया, ये तो थोड़ा weak spot रह गया. Even if your own published journals, if I look back to a journal of mine published in 2011, you know, when I read it, तब तो मुझे ऐसा ही लगता अरे इसमें तो ये पॉइंट तो कितना, इसको तो बहुत बढ़िया तरीके से बोला जा सकता था. एवरी डे ह्यूमन बीइंग्स कीप ऑन लर्निंग. और आपको अगर आपका पुराना वर्क अगर आप खोलोगे, आप खुद ही उसमें करेक्शन कर ही पाओगे. सो इफ समबडी इज आस्किंग regarding some work which has already been published and you feel that your argument is weak, this can very well be publicly acknowledged. Again, as I'm telling you, for a low radar journal, these things usually won't come up. Somebody mails you and questions you, why is this happening or why is that not happening? But if the publication is in a journal of repute and which is highly referred by many people, in one word, very high impact factor, that is many people refer to it, cite it, in that case, definitely these questions will come up and these questions needs to be addressed. If the person is intellectually honest, has not done any fabrication, falsification, plagiarism, will be able to address it with humility. And agar aisa lage ki publish ho gaya lekin kuch galati ho gaya hai, an honest person will be able to acknowledge it. Suchila ma'am, somebody was raising a hand. Do I need to take the question now or should we take it at the end of the session?
Ma'am, I'm not able to see anybody who's raising an.
Oh, I just
yes, there was a question.
Okay, yeah. Should I take it now or at the end of the session?
Yes, you can continue, and if you want to give the response,
then let me take it at the end of the session altogether so that we can keep the time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Please ask the participants to reserve the questions for the end of the session. We can answer those then. Okay. Then demonstrate consistency, right? कि जो honest है, वो हर ही paper में, if there's a mistake, we'll acknowledge it. Otherwise, we'll be very consistent. Or if there's a क्या बोलते हैं उसको alternative view जो अगले पेपर में आया है, then that will of course be acknowledged by the researcher. So consistency is necessary. Next is अगर कोई counter argument करता है and the researcher जिसको अटैक किया, मतलब argument जिसके against argument दिया हुआ है, if he attacks तो मतलब कोई dishonesty है. Because if somebody is giving an argument, instead of attacking, there should always be a method of answering. Then when addressing an argument, there should not be any misrepresentation. And see, when we are doing all this, we can just go back, and this is not only about research, it's our daily life also. कि हमसे कोई argument कर दिया, तो खुद को सही बताने के लिए उनका जो view है, उसको हम misrepresent कर देते हैं. We know very well that the other person did not want to say this. But what do we do so that my point gets proved? So because मैंने paper लिखा हुआ है ना, so it's my ego that it has to be right. I got it published. So the researcher misrepresents the argument made by the other. It's a sign of dishonesty only. Because an honest person will be humble, coming back to the same point again and again. And even when there's a criticism, be willing to publicly acknowledge it. So while no one is perfect, और even जो लोग intellectual honesty के बात करते हैं और intellectual honesty करने की कोशिश करते हैं, they also might move into some kind of mistake जो dishonesty में categorize हो सकता है. But at the same time, we need to understand that from the viewpoint of the judge, actually, is about the intention, and intellectual honesty doesn't have much to do with intelligence. It's not that an intelligent person will be intellectually honest, because on the contrary, a person who is very intelligent, very sharp, is often more capable of being intellectually dishonest. So intelligence has got nothing to do with honesty. Intention has. So where the person is intelligent, very sharp, very good acumen is not what decides whether the person is honest or not. ये तो बहुत intelligent person है, ये तो honesty होगा, ऐसा कुछ नहीं. Intention decides honesty, not the intelligence. So moving to the other part, although they are very overlapping, as I said, honesty is when you speak to others about the truth, and integrity is when you speak to yourself about the truth. But it's again about the truth only, सच्चाई के बारे में ही है. So ये बहुत overlapping है. So anyway, research integrity मतलब क्या? It means conducting research in such a way that allows others to have a confidence and trust in the methods used and finding the research. So intellectual honesty is not only concerned with research. It is concerned, it's a way of life. तो हर चीज में honest है, वो research में भी honesty होगा. और जो हर चीज में dishonest है, वो अचानक research करते वक्त honest नहीं होगा. Right. So it is about, when we learned about intellectual honesty, what we learned is the way of life. And when we talking about research integrity, we are focusing here not about the integrity of the character of the person. We are talking about the research integrity, means whatever methods you are using, whatever techniques you are using, you need to be integrated in that. Now, this relates to both scientific integrity of the conducted research and also the professional integrity of the researchers. Scientific integrity में अगर वापस से वही सब आता है, the way you are collecting the data, that should be truthful. The way you're analyzing it should be absolutely clean and transparent. And professional integrity would mean the tasks that जो हमें example वहाँ पे किया था ना कि जो NIH के लिए application आया और उसी से reviewer एक portion निकाल के खुद का application बना दिया. That's a lack of professional integrity, not scientific integrity. So that was when somebody defies the work as a professional, that is deviation from the professional integrity. So when we're talking in context of research, it is not only about the person who is the researcher. We're talking about integrity also of the reviewer, of the editor, of the publisher. If the publishers have a tendency of repeatedly publishing the work of authors who belong to very renowned universities without giving any importance to fresh authors, that is also denial of professional integrity. Now, if the work of that renowned individual from a renowned university is good, that definitely needs to be published, because very good work come out this way. But that should not be at a cost of completely defying the new authors or people from less known universities. So it should be based on the work and the power of the work. Otherwise, again, it is defiance of professional integrity. So professional integrity is not only for the researchers, it is for the, as I said, the reviewers, the editors, the publishers. खुद का मतलब नहीं देखना है. Wider good of the society देखना है. किसको? Author को भी देखना है. Publisher को लगे कि इनको तो कोई नहीं जानता, इनका यूनिवर्सिटी भी कोई नहीं जानता, मेरा citation बढ़ेगा क्या अगर इसका publish कर दिया? That is not the way. The way is इसका काम बहुत बढ़िया है. बहुत unknown university है, लेकिन काम बहुत बढ़िया है. काम बहुत honest है. So that should be published. That is the integrity of the publisher. So at every stage, integrity is needed. It is not that the course is mainly done by the researchers. But that does not mean that integrity in case of research, सिर्फ researcher को ही दिखाना है. Every person, in every stakeholder, in the process of publication, सभी को has to be integrated. Oh, the next point is only that all the parties in the research process should actively adhere to the ethical principles and professional standards, not only the researcher. And when we are talking about adherence, it means adoption of the principles and practices as a personal credo. ऐसा नहीं कि जो मैंने वो C12 वाला एग्जांपल बोला था कि रूल मेकर बोला है इसलिए नहीं. अंदर से we need to understand that we need to be integrated, we need to be right in what you are doing. Okay. Next is why do we need research integrity? because education, research, innovation are the basic pillars of the contemporary advanced society. Society को जो भी आज मिल रहा है, it is all based on new and new research every single day. The society is built on the research. So आप सोचिए एक building बन रहा है जिसका foundation ही हिला हुआ है, it's a very weak foundation, तो वो building तो एक earthquake में ही गिर जाएगा. So if we want a strong society, every individual should know in his or her mind that my work, wherever I'm publishing, might be the basis of the work of the next researchers. कोई शायद मेरा वर्क पढ़ेगा, वो जब ये पढ़ेगा वो यही सोचेगा ये तो पब्लिश हो गया है, मतलब ये रिव्यू हो गया है, मतलब ये सही है, तो इसको सही मान के मैं अपना रिसर्च कर रहा हूँ. तो अगर हम कुछ गलत चीज छाप देते हैं जानबूझ के, कोई फैब्रिकेटेड डेटा के बेसिस पे कुछ छाप देते हैं, वी शुड नो कि हम दूसरे द नेक्स्ट रिसर्च, इवन इफ द पर्सन इज ऑनेस्ट, उसका काम हमने ऑलरेडी खराब कर दिया क्योंकि उसका बेस ही गलत हो गया है. Because we are dependent on the reliability of the results of research work for further research. जो सोसाइटी है, सोसाइटी के सिटीजन, दे शुड बी कॉन्फिडेंट ऑन द रिसर्च रिजल्ट्स, बिकॉज जो भी रिसर्च होता है फाइनली इट्स यूज्ड बाय समबडी और द अदर. हु यूजेस इट? द कॉमन पीपल. द कॉमन पीपल कैन बी मी टू, right? Somebody else, I am a researcher, but I am also I'm a common person for some other researcher's outcome. So every individual is, every researcher although does research on his own, but is also subject to the outcome of somebody else's research, either in society or in medicines or in some structure or in some system somewhere or the other. Hence, all researchers must follow the basic moral principles and should internalize this integrity and honesty. At the very heart of science is the trustworthiness of the researchers. अगर किसी जगह पे, किसी देश में, अगर हमारे in a world structure or the world system अगर researcher पे भरोसा नहीं किया जा सकता है, तो फिर पूरा I mean, nothing can advance. The society can't advance, right? आप किसी में भी, आप सिंपल आप जब एक ट्रेन में बैठ जाते हो, एक एरोप्लेन में बैठ जाते हो, we don't even, do you ever think कि ये एरोप्लेन जिसने डिजाइन किया होगा ठीक डिजाइन किया है ना, गिर तो नहीं जाएगा आसमान से? We don't even think, we don't even know how much we trust the research outcomes. So some automobile engineer had designed it someday. On that basis, this aeroplane was made. But do we think while boarding a flight कि ये ठीक से हुआ है क्या? ये गिर तो नहीं जाएगा बीच आसमान से? हम क्यों नहीं सोचते? Because we trust the research outcomes. Maybe we don't think of this consciously, but we trust it. लेकिन अगर हमारे सामने बहुत ज्यादा ऐसा एग्जाम्पल्स आता है कि रिसर्च आउटकम्स आर रॉन्ग, उससे कुछ गलत हो गया, तो अगर हमारा कॉन्फिडेंस चला जाता है, सो वी आर सच अ डाउटफुल लॉट. हम कुछ भी काम कॉन्फिडेंटली नहीं कर पाएंगे. बट वी डोंट. How are we living in this society? We are buying things, we are buying medicines, we are buying so many food items, we are boarding aeroplanes, we are communicating, and anything you can think of is outcome of some or the other research in various forms. So the key elements are honesty, thoroughness, consistency, precision. It has to be very transparent. Care and respect should be shown towards all participants. Participants means the human participants से उनका dignity. कोई animal है तो उनका care. किसी का कोई nobody should suffer any kind of damage because of your research. And of course, accountability and proper usage of the funds and the infrastructure. जब funding के base में research होता है, तो हर पैसे का हिसाब होना चाहिए. Or if you are using somebody's infrastructure, then that also has to be very much, you need to be accountable for that. I mean, the researcher needs to be accountable for that. Which practices indicate research integrity? एक honesty and fairness in proposing, performing, and reporting the research. Next is accuracy and fairness in representing contributions to research proposals and reports. ये हम सभी पहले किया, again in concrete way. Or from the viewpoint of the reviewer, proficiency and fairness in peer review. जब review होता है, when somebody gets an assignment as a reviewer, they also should ensure proficiency, fairness, a detailed analysis. मिला है, चलो ऊपर ऊपर देख के no कर देते हैं या yes कर देते हैं. Professional is integrity. from the point of the reviewer हो गया वो. So if somebody is accepting the task of a reviewer, should ensure that he or she has adequate time to actually review the various aspects of the paper. Next is cooperation in the scientific interactions, communication and sharing of resources. क्योंकि research तो एकदम अकेले किया नहीं जा सकता है. You often have to communicate with other stakeholders, other researchers. So उसमें cooperation होना चाहिए. अगर कोई conflicts of interest है, जो आपका last session was only on conflicts of interest. So if there are any conflicts of interest, they need to be disclosed very clearly. In fact, all good journals would ask you to disclose if you have any conflicts of interest. That's always mentioned. Next is protection of human subjects in the conduct of research. If the human subjects are there, then of course their protection has to be ensured. If animals have been used, it's to be ensured that unka health may be koi effect nahi ho, and adherence of the mutual responsibilities of the mentors and the trainees. When mentor-trainee relationship exists in that kind of research. So the self checkpoints are, तो हम खुद कैसे ensure करें कि we are being integrated, that act only in a way that you would want your actions to become a universal law. हमको कोई भी action करने के वक्त regarding research here is, but it's for general life also. We should act in case of research in such a way that we would be absolutely okay अगर ये every single person of this universe follows it. Even if it's a universal law, we won't have any problem. Next is act in such a way that you always treat humanity as both the means of action and also as an end. Now, matlab you act in a way in which you would like yourself to be treated. जैसे हम खुद चाहते, like when I'm having a medicine, I want that it should be outcome of good research. Similarly, when I'm doing a research, I should ensure that my outcome should be as much comfortable and trustable by the other party. Self checkpoints to ensure scientific integrity and research ethics. We are continuing on that. Like research integrity is necessary throughout the research process. शुरू से last तक, मतलब जब plan कर रहे हैं, जब conduct कर रहे हैं, जब results आ रहा है, हर step में honesty in all aspects of research are necessary. When you're presenting the research goals, when you're reporting on the research methods, जब आप data gather कर रहे हो, जब आप acknowledge कर रहे हो others' works, सभी, मतलब in every single step, this integrity and honesty should be there. When you are doing the research, you should be extremely careful, very thorough. कि क्या method हम use कर रहे हैं, जो protocol है regarding using that method, are we adhering to that? When we are drawing interpretation, have we studied sufficiently from other literature whether we are doing the correct way of drawing interpretation? What we are concluding, we should be responsible for what we are concluding. कुछ भी बोल दिया हाँ या ना, मुझे लगा apparently बोल दिया नहीं, क्योंकि that might be used as a basis of further research. And of course, while communicating, जो आया है सही सही वही बोलना चाहिए, उसको manipulate करके थोड़ा इधर उधर करके नहीं. Next is transparency and open communication. Whenever there is conflict of interest, declared it. It is pretty possible that some kind of conflict of interest does exist. In reporting of research data collection methods, किस तरह से collect किया है? Have you reused any data which was collected from any other purpose? Mention it. The reuse किया है, लेकिन मतलब it was for some different purpose. I try to fit in my data. If something of that kind has happened, तो उसको क्यों किया है? ये correct fit है कि नहीं? Disclose it. In the analysis and interpretation of data, of course, integrity is necessary, and negative results भी आता है, so findings should be made available. वो भी बहुत help होगा दूसरों के लिए जानने के लिए कि चलिए ये process नहीं करते, इसमें तो नहीं आया ना, मतलब जो desired result है. So maybe this process will not lead me to my outcome. So publication of negative results is also good. In presenting the work to other researchers and to the general public, we have to be very careful. And of course, care and respect for all participants, including human, animals, environment, and all the cultural aspects. The key takeaways are that we need to delve deep into understanding कि अगर हम dishonesty और disintegrity का काम करते हैं, वो सिर्फ खुद के लिए ही नहीं, full humanity के लिए बहुत ज़्यादा damaging है. We should trust that being honest will yield results, not only in my research, but in all aspects of life. ये विश्वास तो होना ही चाहिए, वरना honesty करने का motivation नहीं रह सकता, मतलब नहीं भी रह सकता है. And then knowing about honesty and integrity will not make us honest, but will at least give us a reason to believe that it is important. ये जो हमको पता चला कि किस तरह से honest रहना है या integrated रहना है, वो automatically हमको honest नहीं कर सकता है, but हमको at least ये तो पता चल गया ना कि क्यों ये इतना important है. So these are the references that I had used. Thank you. And now the questions जो है, if you want to put forward the questions, and thank you everybody. You can keep, please come.
Thank you, Vidisha ma'am. What an informative session. Each and every aspect you have covered. I do not think that after so many sessions and your effective presentation, informative session, the students will have too much query. Only few queries are there. One question is that please tell me about popular beliefs. There is a question.
Popular beliefs regarding, okay, that's phrase that was over there regarding the concept of, I think the person has quoted from that particular definition without a mention, is what we had discussed also. What is the popular belief regarding scholarly conduct? The popular belief is that when you are collecting the data, you collect it from a correct source, you report it correctly. What is popular belief? Popular belief मतलब है जो widely जिसको सही माना जाता है, इसका मतलब ही popular belief है. So वो data correct way में collect हुआ है, कोई manipulation नहीं हुआ है, वही है popular belief. जब आप analyze कर रहे हो, what is the popular belief? What is would be conducted popularly as the correct way? कि आप sufficient देख लियो कि this is the correct method of analyzing, and then you have analyzed it correctly. See, after doing everything, yes, after you, it is not directly published. It is sent for a review. But as I told you, कि आजकल तो इतना predatory journal जो हो गया है, उसकी वजह से क्या होता है, वहां पे review अच्छी तरह से नहीं होता है. लेकिन जो, as I told you about the last article that journal that I publication that I had, वो 1.5 साल तक review हुआ 3 बार. मतलब something इसको और थोड़ा बेहतर कर दो, और थोड़ा बेहतर कर दो. अगर जब ऐसा होता है ना तो it's not trustworthy, but you know very well there are so many predatory journals जहाँ पे आपको 1 महीने में result आ जाएगा. So in that case, even if see, for the sake of publication, if one is publishing in a journal which has ISSN number, because it might serve the purpose of the researcher, it is possible, तब वो सोचेगा ही कि मैं क्यों 2 साल लेके एक पेपर लिखूं. अब मुझको अपना रिक्रूटमेंट करवाना है, मेरा जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है उसमें शायद बोल रहा है कि ISSN नंबर एंड पीयर रिव्यू इज गुड, तो मैं क्यों 2 साल दूं? व्हाई नॉट आई पब्लिश इट ओवर हियर? सो यहाँ पे और काम आएगा आपका ऑनेस्टी, क्योंकि आपको तो पता चल गया कि व्हाई वी शुड बी ऑनेस्ट. सो द पॉपुलर बिलीव इज, even if this review doesn't stop you, you be intellectually honest. The belief is that you will be intellectually honest. आप डेटा सही से कलेक्ट करोगे, आप उसका सही से एनालाइज करोगे, आप सब देख लियो कि कौन सा बेस्ट वे है और आप वही प्रोसेस यूज किए हो. दैट इज अ पॉपुलर बिलीफ.
Thank you, ma'am. Nobody has remaining any query. There is no query in the chat box. So we are going to wind up this session. It's a tea break or lunch break for the participants. Ma'am, before closing the session, I am formally acknowledge your presence. What a wonderful session and informative with practical examples you have cited in your PPTs. Inform the students about why we should go practice with intellectual honesty. As you have also covered misconduct also. So it's a big part and parcel of all these things are interrelated. Scientific misconduct leading to several consequences which are not considered to be you can say in a way which will be fruitful for the society in any case. So keeping yourself as a researcher, being honest is a very important thing which you have highlighted with your very first line and with the quotation of Spencer Johnson. integrity is telling myself the truth, and honesty is telling the truth to other people. So looking into the mirror, mirror will reflect you, what you are actually. So very informative session, and thank you for your kind presence here. With a
Thank you so
short
much.
notice, you have spared some time for us, and
Thanks a lot.
um, yes, thank you, ma'am. Thank you from this platform for sharing your experience and knowledge uh, in this session with this intellectual this honesty and honesty to be practiced with the research ethics. So, participants, thank you from our side. We will meet again. Oh, there is a question.
Okay.
Yes, Preeti, you can go ahead. You can ask your question before closing of the session. You can do write in the chat box. Yes, please do hurry up. Sorry, I cannot unmute you. You can put your query in the box. Before that, she is going to write her query. Ma'am, you have mentioned that if by somehow you have gone with something wrong with your publication, so at that time you will have to publicly acknowledge yourself. So how to be acknowledged and which platform, because the journal has published your paper already.
The journal has published, but it is always in the hands of the researcher to write a mail back, and as a corrigendum, if the journal agrees, can definitely publish in the next issue. That this was my paper publication. This is something that I have noticed in the outcomes which has been published, and then that can be easily mailed through a letter to the editor, and after conversation with the editor, if the editor agrees, it can of course be set up as a corrigendum in the next issue of the journal.
Many of the time publications already been done, they are not going to be to edit the already published paper. They're saying is that we have already published, it is in the public domain. So is there any option for that?
I'm not getting what's the question?
When you are already published and your publication editor, the editor of that publication is saying that
No,
you
again,
have
as I said, yes. It is also possible that the publisher, now see, this will not happen. Again, I am telling you, this will not usually happen for very reputed journals which are completely under the scanner. Because if some researcher says that there has been a mistake, then that journal, for the fear of losing its reputation, will publish it. Because if somebody else comes to know about it, then is a loss of reputation for the journal. But for not so well-known journals, often the publisher might not agree to, because they might think that publishing this might defame my own journal. The researcher can't do anything. What you can do is, from your side, you are clear. Honesty is always about that. Like when we are honest, it's not necessary that the other party will also be as honest as I want to be. What we can do is send a corrigendum mail. Now, if the publisher, for his, as I said, this integrity has to be from every single party, not only the researcher, the reviewer, the editor, the publisher. That is what I mentioned. If the publisher doesn't want to because of his own self-interest, you can't help it. But then you can send as a corrigendum mail, of course.
Okay, ma'am, we have got the question from Preeti. She is saying that where my work is taken away during research, where to report? Proposal developed by a student under me without notifying, taken under her as she is head of somewhere. So this is also
If this has happened, you are saying what I've understood is,
I'm
see,
repeating, ma'am.
I've understood. She has done some work. Now she doubts somebody has taken away her work and has reported it and has published it. Am I right?
Yes, the proposal developed
See,
by the student.
now you all have a session on COPE-WAME. Now you have Committee on Publication Ethics. Now it depends on at what level this has happened. If it is that it has been published in a very reputed journal, which is monitored by COPE. BMU won't happen because it's for the science journals. So I'm assuming that no, my student has taken away with ready proposal at PG level. If it is in that case, so in that case, COPE, they won't help you because it's not about a publication in some reputed journal. In that case, of course, you have to go to your university only and cite with evidence that this has happened. No, in that case, see, what we are, like she has said, by head without notification. In that case, you have to go to the apex body of your own university only. Here you have bodies which run, there are committee of publication ethics, but these are very localized things. In that case, with your grievance, see, every grievance has a resolution. So if your university or your college, I don't know where you belong to, have any grievance cell, you can go there. Or else, if it doesn't have, then you go to the apex body of your college, of your university, taking sufficient evidences of what you are saying, that this was the work. Yes, then you go to the apex body of your university, or you can also go to the research advisory committee, right? You can also go to the research advisory committee, dean of the research advisory committee. Now, this I'm saying on the without knowing whether your university already has a grievance cell or not. If it has, then that's the best place. Otherwise, you can go to the dean of the research advisory committee and know from that person, who should be the next person to report. Somebody who's taking care of the research activities is usually called research advisory committee dean.
Hoping that Preeti, you have got your answer. If it is still
but
not
this is very
possible, you
localized.
can-
But this is very
Yes,
localized. So this COPE and all, they can't help you. This is very localized problem which you're talking, but this is a very pertinent problem. If this has happened, then of course every grievance has to have a resolution. So if you don't have it on your immediate head, then you go to the RAC dean. If that doesn't help, then you go to the VC. But try, just who is above you in your hierarchy, try to report it over there.
So before going that, I would like to add up with your points you have kept here. Preeti, you can, as it is localized, ma'am has said, because you are not at the international reputed journal. There can BMU and COPE can help you in that matter. But if you are localized, you are being harassed by your work being taken away by your student. So at least you can keep some written up complaints that grievances ma'am have said. So keep a written record of your grievances and send your copies to your apex bodies. Your research and development cell also, if it is possible, if it is there. And if it is still not there, then ma'am has already been explained that you should go for vice chancellor of your university, and still along with that, you can also take up help uh, of social media. This work is of yours, of your original thoughts, and this is you can claim your work for that it is your original work along with evidences.
But be
So
very
might be
sure
true
of the
about that.
evidences, because while
Yes,
accusing somebody, you to be very sure of the evidences you have is absolutely right. Accusations are dangerous otherwise.
because as your famous quote कि चोर शोर मचाता है, तो चोर की चोरी को सिद्ध करना it is very difficult. It is very difficult to establish the truth on the behalf of truth. If you are having enough evidence, then only you can go for that. Otherwise, you can face some difficulties. So thank you, ma'am. Thank you,
Yeah.
Vidisha, ma'am. Interactive and informative session. Pleasure to meet you. Such an intelligentsia at this platform and addressing the issues of the students in research and publication ethics in this platform. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you from
Thank
the
you so
side.
much.
So
Thanks.
participants, we will meet you at 2 o'clock. You can take your tea break and lunch break. Till then, you can enjoy. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Yeah. Thanks.